All right, welcome everybody once again. This is Conspiracy or Not. Here we come. And I, as usual, forgot to do a complete screen share while we did the intro. And as usual, this is less than professional introduction. How we doing, Amy?
Hanging in here. How's it going with you?
All right, well, it's Friday once again. It's February 2017. It's February 10th. We are without our regular co-host, Ian. He will be joining us later on. He's got some business to attend to. He should be joining us somewhere around halfway through the show. So tonight we are with our regular contributing guest, become quite a regular fixture on our program here, Miss Amy, otherwise known as Amaterasu Solar. And I would ask everybody to please subscribe to my channel, subscribe to Amy's channel, and subscribe to Ian's channel. Ian is Gemini MC69. Subscribe to both of our channels because we alternate hosting, and it's actually supposed to be Ian's turn to host this evening. And he, like I said, he's not going to be here until later on, so I'm hosting the show tonight. So here we are, Amy. What's going on with you?
Well, being amused by some of the stuff that's being reported, like apparently Fukushima is vastly worse than they were saying, which, you know, I ponder whether we haven't been psyoped from the get-go on the dangers of radiation. I don't know.
Something that I wonder about. Without a Geiger counter, there's no way to know without taking a bunch of people's word for it. You know, it's.
What I'm talking about is that, you know, there's, what's his name, Galen Windsor, who was out there before he passed away of old age, I might add, stating that he was a nuclear scientist, and he was saying that in the beginning, you know, at the start of things, they were working with the radioactive materials without any kind of protection, having no problems. He would go swimming in the cooling pool and even drink the water from that pool.
Is he still alive?
well, no, like I said, he passed away a few years ago, but he was old. I mean, he was really old.
Okay.
And, but he would be out there, you know, telling people all this stuff. And he said that one day the government came tromping in and said, "This is dangerous. You need protection." And everybody's like, "What? Where did this come from?" So, you know, based on that, I have to give some probability that the whole nuclear scare is manufactured. I have to give some probability. I don't know where to place the probabilities, but then I think it would make sense if they wanted to create fear in us to control us.
Well, we know that they want to make us sick, and we know that they want to kill us by what they call via soft kill.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the nuclear, you know, radioactivity of whatever is happening out of Fukushima and some of the other facilities that are leaking and damaged and old, and I guess you probably heard that there was an explosion just a day or two ago in France, one of their nuclear facilities. They got a major problem, potentially leaking. What I was going to say is, when it comes to the PSYOP aspect, they're not, you know, the mainstream is not talking about the danger that's coming out of Fukushima. So to me, and I also have to consider what's the agenda, right? We always will have to wonder what's the purpose. Like Ole Demigard, mentioned to us on our show, what's the net result?
Right, right.
What is the effect in the minds of the population? What's happening in the people's minds that are focused on this subject? Eddie B is with us, Juxtaposed, Dean's Dude. Hi guys. My buddy Joe Finn from Texas, he's listening in. He's at work right now. He's actually going to be joining us a little bit later on. And Joe and I are kindred spirits, and we have extremely interesting conversations, just like Ian and myself and you, Amy. So I look forward to talking with Joe.
Yeah.
But anyway, like I was saying, what's the net result? What's coming out of Fukushima is, I honestly don't know. Without a Geiger counter, I can't go to the Pacific coast and test radiation levels in the water. And as far as I know, I don't know anybody that's actually doing it and making YouTube videos and telling people about it.
Well, here's my thought. There have been some fairly recent photographs of the area, and I note that very normal-looking plant life is just growing perfectly healthily there, all over, right up to these reactors. And, I've had some people say, well, plant life, it survives on radiation from the sun. And I'm like, well,
No,
yeah,
that's not the same kind of radiation.
But when you stop and think of it, even if it was, it would be based on the figures they're telling us. It would be sort of like saying, well, a human should be able to eat a ton of food every day because, golly gee, we live. I mean, that's essentially the same concept.
Well, if there's a psyop happening with the radiation, I would suggest that the psyop is that there is radiation, and that's why they're not talking about it. You know what I mean? Because there's no real mention in the mainstream about any radiation making its way across the Pacific. They're not talking about it. So how is it possible that they had 3 or 4 nuclear reactors melt down and explode and all that, cooling water leaked into the ocean? How is it possible that that's not a problem?
Well, I ponder whether that's just what we've been told has happened. I don't know for sure that any of that happened.
Well,
but
come on now. We saw the pictures. The tops of the buildings and the whole buildings themselves have been blown off and blown apart.
I agree that something happened there. I don't know what is what I'm saying. Yes, it could have been that. It could have been empty buildings that were exploded with, conventional explosives. Who knows?
Well, I mean, it did happen right after the tsunami. So unless they planned the tsunami and everything else.
Well, I have a sneaking suspicion that the tsunami was created by HARP or a HARP-like facility. I mean, there's at least 23 of them around our planet. Most people don't know that. But there's at least 23 facilities with HARP capabilities.
Nevertheless, though, it was a nuclear facility. There's no question about that. There's nobody even questioning whether it was or wasn't an active nuclear facility. So I don't think that, that they blew up empty buildings.
Well, here's another thought.
And it's sort of like what Juxtaposed just dropped in the chat box. He said, I would agree that it's more likely to be worse than they say.
Well, here's my thought also on that. I know that they have the ability to draw energy from the ether. And is it possible that they built these nuclear facilities to fake nuclear activity and then just using the relatively cheap method of getting energy out of the ether via something on the order of electrogravitics to actually create the energy, and there really isn't anything there of a nuclear nature? Yeah. I mean, that's possible too. Again, I'm not saying all of this is true. I'm saying these are possibilities, and I have to give some little bit of probability even to them.
All right, fair enough. It's a possibility. I'll admit it's a possibility. I don't think it is. Mainly because there are so many facilities, so many nuclear scientists working on these projects, so many subcontractors involved closely with these projects and facilities. I have a real hard time getting my head around the idea that every single one of them is either A, in on the game, or B, completely ignorant that what they're doing isn't having any effect on the machinery that they're operating, and C, that every single one of them has kept their mouth shut. Now, I understand that $1 trillion goes a long way. You've heard me say that. I understand carrots and sticks. I understand how people are threatened and people are kept quiet. I get all that. But considering the worldwide nuclear, wow, the word just left my brain just now. The entire industry,
Right.
all the way from the university level, all the way up to the nuclear submarines. There are people working on nuclear machines, nuclear devices, nuclear production facilities, and what they do produces results. They see the results. They know the results. Nobody's even leaked out the tiniest inkling that what's happening at the facilities is not what's actually happening. It's not like the secrecy surrounding CERN, for instance. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I'm not, I really don't know where to place the probabilities on all of this. I really don't. I'm just saying I have to consider the fact that, with our friend William Casey, what was his quote? When everything the American public believes is false, we know our disinformation campaign. I forget the exact quote, but
you mean the old CIA director?
Yes. In the 80s.
When everything the American population believes is false, we'll know our disinformation campaign is complete, or something like that.
Here it is. We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false.
Well, Juxtapose made a good point that the fishing industry is huge, and I think that's an enormous understatement, although he makes a great point. It just can't be overstated how big that industry is.
True.
I mean, worldwide, fish is probably 20 to 30% of the entire, maybe more, the entire diet of the entire population. I mean, some cultures eat fish primarily, huge cultures, China, the Asian cultures, they eat fish primarily. Most of the coastal populations eat fish on the majority. So I would say that fishing might account for maybe as much as 50%, possibly more, of the entire diet of the entire planet.
True.
So that's huge. That is huge. And it would make more sense to me that they are keeping it quiet, which is what they're doing. You don't see anything coming out on the news on Fukushima.
I just got, I think it was, what was the name of that channel? Secure Team just came out with a panic piece about Fukushima and how they're just going to town on the radiation is just leaps and bounds beyond what was being reported, and so on and so forth. But my question is, if that were as bad as it is said to be, why are we seeing virtually nothing in effect in the human population? I mean, as far as I can tell, we're not having any problems. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, there could be a spike in cancers, especially on the west coast of America, because that's where the current carries the water from Japan literally crashing right into the Pacific coast.
Well, yeah.
America. So we could potentially be seeing a rise in cancer rates on those populations, as well as a rise in cancer rates in various parts of the world where they're consuming the fish that are taken from those parts of the ocean. And at the same time, you and I would not hear about that, you know.
Well, I can see that, but then I could also make a case for the fact that if they were wanting to fake a problem like that, they've got all those nifty airplanes spewing crap into our skies. Who knows what they're putting in it and where? Theoretically, they could say, well, we're going to fake this, so we're going to put something carcinogenic into the air.
Okay. I see where you're going, and that's part of the point I was trying to make a little bit earlier. If they were faking it, what's the agenda?
Well, when
we have to ask cui bono, who's benefiting what, and what is the benefit?
The benefit, I would say, is to keep people in panic about, nuclear attacks and oh my gosh, and we've got to make preemptive strikes. And
I understand that, but if they were doing that, wouldn't you expect to hear more about it on the news?
Well, we certainly hear about places where they say, oh, they're nuclear, they got the bomb, or they're this close to getting the bomb. We do hear a lot of that on the regular news, and certainly that panics people. And oh my gosh, okay, we better go in and stomp them down before they get the bomb, or whatever. It manufactures some consent there, right? I'm just saying it could be that. And people in fear are so much easier to control than people who are not fearful.
I understand, but if fear is the goal, and I understand that as a goal because it works, they want to keep people in a state of confusion and fear because you make bad decisions under that state of stress. Mm-hmm. And that's perfectly logical. However, when it comes to the Fukushima, the radiation aspect, there's nothing. There's nothing in the news that would cause that fear. They're not pumping the fear. They're not using that agenda in that way.
But it's definitely coming out to a fair extent on the web. And here's my thought. By not putting it in the mainstream and only letting it out on the web, this adds to people's ideas that, gee, maybe it's even worse than they're saying. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes,
oh, they're trying to hide it because, I don't put that kind of machination past them.
I understand what you're saying. They are a clever bunch.
I'm playing sort of a devil's advocate only because I can see this possibility. And I want people to at least think about this possibility. Whether they accept it or not, that's up to them.
All right, fair enough.
I don't necessarily accept it, but I have to say it's out there.
Fair enough.
It's a possibility.
Fair enough. They are a clever bunch. I'm not proud to admit it, but they are, in fact, a very clever bunch. Sinister though they are indeed a very, very clever bunch. They're sinister as hell, but they're no dummies, that's for sure. All right, so I want to move forward here. I've got an article that I want to start reading to you guys. And I forget offhand where this came to my attention. And if I remember it, I'll tell you where I heard it from. But this article here is, it's from the altmarket.com website. In fact, I almost forgot to do it again. I need to do a screen share so you can see what I'm looking at here. Pardon me, give me just a second. Screen share, And what I want to do is I want to show you this article here, which is pretty darn interesting. And again, I forget exactly how this came to my attention. So forgive me if I'm forgetting to give somebody credit. If I remember, I'll bring it up. This here, it doesn't say at the top who. Brandon Smith, I guess, is the author of this article. Clinton versus Trump and the co-option of the liberty movement. Okay, so check this out. Most of my readers as we are well aware of my position on U.S. elections in general, they are an eternal farce meant to give false hope to the masses. To that, I'm sure we can all agree. They are designed to make the public feel as if we are participating in our own governance, when in reality we are only ever allowed to choose from a list of candidates that the elites pre-select. Okay, this is, surface stuff right here. This is, hang on, this is going to get meaty in a minute. This does not mean that all politicians are corrupted or controlled, but according to the evidence I have seen, the majority of government represents the desires of a select few and not the majority of the citizenry. Okay, this is not shocking to anybody listening to the show right now, but check it out. There is absolutely no chance of retaking our current government by working within the system. Again, I agree with that. To be blunt, the system is now structured to protect itself and nothing else. To think that it can be influenced through elections is an absurd notion. For the past decade, though, I have seen a powerful shift in the public psyche towards a realization that our government is built upon a fraudulent paradigm, the false left versus the false right. I also understand that if I can see the shift, so can the numerous think tanks funded by the elites. The elites do not always try to obstruct changes in the public awareness. This would be an unrealistic and fruitless effort. Instead, they often work to co-opt these changes and exploit them to the benefit of the establishment. Consider, for instance, the aggressive takeover of the Tea Party movement by the New Conservative Guard. I joined activist efforts in 2007 when the Tea Party was a small but growing organization, primarily around the goal of auditing and or shutting down the Federal Reserve. Many people are not even aware that the Tea Party was launched by Ron Paul, among other libertarian voices. As the movement began to grow exponentially, there were some attempts to stifle it. Accusations of homegrown terrorism were thrown around, not necessarily by Democrats, but by the Republican Party. When the strategy of demonization failed, the same Fox News supported neocons that called for our heads suddenly began hijacking our bandwagon. I'll never forget the day I saw a supposed Tea Party event featuring main speaker like Rick Santorum and Mike Huckabee. It was then that I knew there was no more Tea Party. Of course, the elites were able to pirate the name or the brand and pirate some of the events, but they were never able to steal away the idea and the principles behind the movement. This seemed to confound the establishment. No matter what tactics they used, the movement, which I and many others have always called the Liberty Movement, just simply would not go away. What the elites did not seem to grasp at that time was that the movement was not rooted in a single organization or a single candidate or even a group of leaders. Instead, the Liberty Movement was and still is rooted in a set of principles. Normal co-option tactics could not possibly work. They could take over the Tea Party, but true liberty activists would simply walk away and start another group or groups. We are adaptable, and because we do not have a traditional centralized leadership, we are difficult to pin down and control. No matter what the elites have tried, they have not been able to lure liberty activists back to the neocon reservation. However, the establishment is not averse to trying new methods and new avenues of attack. The first and most common strategy of co-option is to fool the target movement into adopting a leader or leaders that they think are friendly, but who are actually working against them. As mentioned earlier, this was attempted with the Tea Party, but it failed. Liberty activists left the Tea Party and continued their efforts elsewhere. When simpler methods elude the establishment, they tend to add complexities. For example, I have written extensively on a concerted effort by Russian government-controlled RT network and others to paint Eastern governments as victims of globalist aggression. As I have outlined and thoroughly evidenced, nations like Russia and China work hand in hand with globalist institutions like the International Monetary Fund, World Bank, the Bank of International Settlements, and the United Nations. It is undeniable that the East is a part of the so-called New World Order. They are not opposed to it. Despite the considerable evidence to the contrary, there is still a percentage of the liberty movement that clings to the notion that globalism is a construct of the West alone and that the East is fighting against it. One purpose of this propaganda is, I believe, to continue the effort to co-opt the liberty movement. If the movement can be convinced to develop adoration for globalist puppets like Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping, then we can eventually be lured into negative actions under false pretenses. Fortunately, the false East-West paradigm is losing its edge, and liberty activists mesmerized by it are coming to their senses once again. The only real paradigm worth our concern is the globalists versus the rest of us. So this article goes on for a few more minutes. In fact, I'll go back here and
very astute, I would say.
Yeah, it's very good. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and read just a little bit more here. Many people will not understand why such measures on the part of the establishment would be necessary. The fact is, the liberty movement is the single most vital activist movement in modern history. It is the core of a great awakening that is accelerating but still fragile. This awakening, if left to grow, will result in the erasure of all false paradigms and the elites behind them. A problem that has plagued humanity for centuries, the problem of centralization and collectivism, community by force rather than by consent, could finally be dismantled. Some will claim such statements amount to delusions of grandeur, but if that were true, the elites would not need to spend vast amounts of money and energy and capital trying to co-opt or demonize us. If we were not a threat, or if our claims were not nonsensical, if we were not a threat, or if our claims were nonsensical conspiracies with no validity, then they would let us clamor about until we inevitably self-destruct. Instead, they have a well-funded organizations like the Southern Poverty Law Center dedicated to endlessly misrepresenting who we are and what we believe in. With the false East-West paradigm not achieving the desired effect, and the hack and slash tactics of the SPLC and the mainstream media doing little to deter the expansion of the movement, the elites have become more sophisticated. Whenever you have a rebellion focused on the inherent ideals of freedom, totalitarian institutions struggle to intervene. The issue is, freedom is not only moral, but practical. Wherever true freedom exists, people are not only happier, but more productive and prosperous. It's hard for a tyrant to fight a rebellion based on freedom because the idea is more powerful than any weapon or any form of treachery. No matter how advanced the tyranny, and no matter how many rebels they imprison or kill, the idea of freedom endures. The only way to destroy a rebellion like this, a rebellion like the liberty movement, is to make it about something other than freedom. The powers that be have to convince the movement to support policies that are destructive to their own ideals. If this can be done, then that rebellion has lost the advantage of principle, the only advantage that really matters. So the article goes on, and I will scroll slowly, so anybody that wants to read any further can pause the video and read the rest of this article. It goes into how Clinton and Bush election basically helped to subvert the liberty movement and draw people back into their pens. Like I have said on many occasions, that Trump is nothing more than the farmer looking out his window and seeing that his livestock has escaped the pen. And in fact, we've had Jim Fetzer on here a couple of times, and Jim has said to us, he's said to our face, Trump's gonna drain the swamp. How can a guy like Jim Fetzer, a man so well educated and so well researched, a man with a conspiracy mind, how can he fall for Trump the way he has?
Good question.
And he's not the only one. There's a lot of people in the liberty movement who have literally fallen for the Trump bandwagon. And look where we are now. He's buddy-buddy with Netanyahu. He's surrounded himself with Goldman Sachs, Rothschild agents. And his spokesperson, his advisor, his press secretary. So far, they're turning out to be utter disgraces.
Yes. Well.
And I just heard that the supposed wall that's going to be built, our southern wall, I think it just doubled in price from something like 12 billion to 21 billion. I know that's not exactly double, but it's damn near.
Close enough for government work. Yep.
So this is a really interesting article here, and I think it makes a very astute point, as you mentioned, that a tyranny who wants to subvert a movement like the Liberty Movement is going to have to really go out of their way and spend a lot of time and effort and money to subvert the movement. You can't derail it. You cannot imprison its leaders. These tactics do not work when it comes to the principles of liberty.
Especially if we're dealing with an anarchistic approach. I mean, when you're trying to deal with people who don't want leaders, how are you going to get them to accept leaders? Just saying.
Sorry, I was just typing as you were speaking there. Please repeat your last sentence, because I
said especially if they're an anarchistic movement, where the whole idea of leaders to begin with are, is not tasty, if you will. Where nobody wants any leaders, it's really hard to say, hey, you guys should take this person as your leader.
Okay, Amy, we have our guy here, the guy that you and I discussed,
right?
Keith Josh. Now, he's in the chat box. He's asking, when do we accept calls? Keith, that's not how it works. This is not a radio show. This is an internet, YouTube, Google Hangout. We're not a station. We don't have a call center. Keith Josh wants to come and talk to us, so I'm going to give him a chance to come talk to us while we wait for Ian to come and hang out. Later, Joe Finn should be joining in a little bit later on. I'm anticipating talking to Joe, but I'm curious as to what Keith Josh has to say. And so I just want to let you know, Keith, if you're listening, and I know that you are, I see you in the chat. Keith, you need to go to your email. I've already sent you the link to the show. It's in your email. Click the link and join the panel. So, and by the way, Keith, if you have any trouble, if you get what's called a 403 error message, sorry, that's Ian calling me. I'll talk to him in a moment. Keith, if you get the 403 error message, all you need to do is delete, go to the link and put your cursor right after the question mark and delete everything after the question mark, and then try the link again, just in case you get the 403 error message. Hey, Sean Gibson. Hey, buddy. Good to see you too. Ian Gemini. Hey, guys. Shoot me the link, Aaron. Oh, okay. That's why you called. There you are, Ian. You're home already. All right, buddy. I'll send you a link. Give me just a minute, and I will do that. So, Amy?
Yes?
Thoughts while I go over to Ian's channel and give him the link?
Well,
fill the airwaves.
Oh, all right. Well, as far as the first of all, I have said this before, and I will here say it again. I don't care for liberty as a term for freedom, because ships' captains give their crew liberty. And to me, even though it has been transmuted to mean freedom, I still think of liberty as something that some higher up is allowing us to have, as opposed to our natural born rights to freedom. So I use freedom as my term when I'm speaking of what I am working towards. You know, that's what the abundance paradigm is all about, is to free us from having to put our energy in to get those tokens to survive on, and allowing us to pursue the things that truly interest us. And so, yeah, freedom. And allowing us to pursue the things that truly interest us.
Sounds like Ian just made it in. I hear an echo. Is that you, buddy?
Yes. I think it was him. I think he needed to.
I'm not on that tab right now. I'm watching the chat box. So.
Right. I just popped in. Yeah, he's here, but he's got himself muted. I guess he's going to turn off.
Hey, guys.
There he is.
Ian,
how are you?
How you doing, buddy?
Good. I was listening to a bit from earlier while I was waiting. Hello, everybody.
All right.
Howdy.
All right, we got a full crew, and
so I hate to go back in time. I hate to go back on things, but when you guys were talking about Fukushima,
yeah,
I know a really good channel. It's called Ms. Milky the Clown 1. And she is, well, I don't know if it's a he or she or whatever, but they've been following Fukushima from the get-go.
Right.
And that's a really good channel to find out what the inside scoop is on that.
I'm gonna write it down. Yeah. Say it again.
Ms. Milky the Clown. Here, I'll put the link in for you guys. I can't put it in the main chat. It's Miss Milky the Clown 1. So. Just all one word.
MS
Milky the Clown.
MS Milky the Clown.
Yeah.
1, all one word.
Yeah. She's got great information about that. I put the link in the sidebar here in our chat, Aaron.
I see it. I just read it out.
And also, TEPCO was caught lying. They were caught covering up what was going on with their staff members. Staff were dying, and they weren't telling anybody. I just read an article the other day, I think it was yesterday, and they were saying that even the dogs don't want to go in there. It's so bad right now.
Really?
Yeah, like that. Nobody wants to go and work there, and if they are working there, then they don't have any idea of what they're walking into. They're like Japanese farmers that have no clue what's going on, right? Also, I live on the West Coast, guys. I live right on Vancouver Island. Okay.
Right.
And I'm pretty much in the stream, in the ocean, in the jet stream, right? And we had a guy, a biologist, who went up and down the side of Vancouver Island along the shore, and he noticed that there was a huge abundance of dead sea life that were always there before. Okay. He noticed that, and he went and took samples, specimens all along, and there was lots that were already extinct.
Wow.
Okay. And there has actually been some reports about the jet stream and the flow of the radiation. I've seen it. It hasn't been a while though, Aaron. That's probably why you're saying that it's not on the mainstream or anything, right? But it wasn't on mainstream news that ever saw anything. So it's been a big cover-up from the get-go, right? Whether or not it's as bad as we think it is, that's another story. And that, of course, like you guys were saying, it brings up the conspiracy, right? It creates a conspiracy.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Because we haven't been told, the full details, and we're kind of in the dark mostly, right? But TEPCO got caught not releasing information about workers dying. Okay. And there was a big hoo-ha about that about a year or two ago. So anyway, sorry guys, I didn't mean to go too back. I just wanted to throw in my 2 cents.
No, I'm glad you threw that in, because the more data I have, the better capable I am of placing good probabilities.
Okay, that's excellent, because we were discussing the potentiality of whether it was a psyop, and if it was, what kind of psyop. Are they hiding, or are they making us afraid, or are they covering it up? And I agree with what you just said, Ian. It does seem like it is worse than they are telling us. And besides the fact that in the mainstream you hear nothing. So if it was a psyop to keep us afraid, then they would make no bones about article or news story after story to tell us all about how bad it is and to be afraid and don't eat this and don't eat that.
No, here it is.
As Juxtaposed pointed out, the fishing industry is huge, so they can't tell you don't eat this, right? Because that would hurt you.
But here's what it is. There was a report. There was a couple in Japan, this couple, and they were on the shore and they filmed aurora borealis looking lights in the sky hours before the tsunami, before the earthquake hit. Now, what causes that is aurora borealis lights in the sky, okay? When they shoot this freaking beam, right? Mm-hmm. And it was reported and filmed shortly before the earthquake struck. Now, the earthquake struck on 3/11, okay? March 11th, 3/11. So it's all occultic in itself. That's 33 right there, okay? 3 times 11 is 33.
Yep.
But it was filmed in advance, and I believe that Japan wasn't going along with something the club wanted them to, and they gave them the HARP weapon. That's what I believe. And they're covering it up. It's not a psyop per se. They're just covering it up, right? Because these plants were built right on the fault line, right along the fault line. Okay.
Yes, they were.
So they're liable, you know. So they're covering up their liability.
Okay. Not to poo-poo what you were saying, Ian, and I appreciate your input, and that you're spot on, and I agree with you. But we are joined with Keith Josh. I'm not sure if I have. There we go. I did have him muted. I'm going to unmute him now. Looks like he's got himself situated and ready. I think you're unmuted. Say something, Keith. How you doing?
I think he has to unmute himself, which is, go to the little box. Go to the little box. Press the down arrow, and then click unmuted. No, we're still not hearing you.
Not have a microphone.
Keith, there's a toolbar on the top of the Hangout page. There you go.
Yeah, I got it.
There we go.
You need to turn your microphone up. I can barely hear you.
Yes, Juxtaposed. The current pulls it across the Pacific, and it comes right along the coast of Oregon and lower Washington. That's where it directly hits. The jet stream from Japan over across the Pacific. It goes like in a sine wave pattern across the Pacific.
I think Keith is...
I think he doesn't have a mic or something. He's got no sound.
He has a mic because we could hear him, but it was like he sounded like he was in the next room.
Getting himself situated, so we'll just give him a minute.
Can you hear me now?
Still pretty far away.
All right. I'm not sure. Can you hear me better now?
No, I can't. Not at all, really.
I'm not sure where. This is just an iPad. I'm not sure where the.
Well, just Aaron, go and turn them up maybe on the control panel.
I can try. I don't know if.
I think he's just got to go into his sound settings and turn up his microphone volume. I think that's
hang on a second. I don't have any control over his volume here.
What?
In fact, when I open up the control panel, on my control panel here, everybody's volume is turned down, but I can hear you guys just fine. So Keith is going to have to adjust his own volume and fix his own audio. I don't think I can do anything on this end. Nothing is working here.
Hey, does anybody know how to do that on this?
I can barely hear.
Dude, I can just barely hear that you're even speaking. I can't make out a word you're saying.
Yeah, you definitely sound like you're talking through a pillow or something.
Miles away.
Yeah, Keith, we can't hear you at all. So you need to get your microphone.
Yeah, there's a checkerboard floor.
He says he's on an iPhone, and I don't know how iPhone sound works.
Well, it ought to work pretty good because the audio on my cell phone works great.
Any better now?
A little bit.
Yeah. How you doing there?
I'm all right.
Welcome to Conspiracy Not. Here we come.
Does anyone know how to turn the volume up?
Yeah, go into your sound settings, and you'll have your microphone volume in there.
Is that on the call?
Well, he's on his cell phone, so I don't.
Be in your settings, wherever your settings are for your phone.
I'll do that.
For your microphone volume.
Yeah, you're not loud enough, so we're gonna have to move forward until you get that straightened out.
Sorry, so what were you guys were going over an article there?
Yeah, it was about the liberty movement having been subverted.
Oh, yeah.
It was actually a really good article. I'm going to put the link in the description box after the video uploads. I don't have time to do that right now. I'm a little busy, running the show and all that, but I will put the link to the article that I read a moment ago. I will put that in the description box a little bit later. And just to remind you, it's, in fact, I'll just go ahead and do another screen share real quick. Since you're our latecomer, I'll do it for you, buddy. This is an article from altmarket.com. And the title of the article is Clinton versus Trump and the Co-option of the Liberty Movement.
Right.
And basically what it goes into is, if you're a tyrant, the gist of this article is this. If you're a tyrant and you have in your population a movement of freedom and liberty, then you're going to have to adopt some very expensive and time-consuming tactics to subvert that movement, because the principles of the movement are the key issue and not the movement or the leaders per se. It's the principle of the movement. It's the principal ideology of freedom and liberty. So this article details a little bit about this false paradigm between the East and the West. Because and anybody who's paying attention to this show, anybody who's paying attention to the media and the news, anybody with a slightly conspiratorial mind would recognize right away that the media in large has portrayed Russia and Putin as the victim, as being opposed to the New World Order construct, the globalist agenda, when in fact they're not.
Yeah.
They're part of
they're playing
system.
They're playing their part of the script.
Playing their part of the script, exactly. Yeah. I mean, Trump to me was just put in as the guy who he's going to pull you along on a string with a carrot on it, right? He's gonna pull you right into the nest, so to speak, right?
Yep.
And lure you in. That's pretty much all. Now he could be doing, he could be doing what he wants to do for the sake of what he wants to do, right? He's still got the option of proposing and putting things that he really does want to see, right? For his own, of course, interests, right? Or special interests.
I'm going to bet that he really doesn't. I'm going to bet that everything he does in the final analysis is planned by his.
But he is like a Manchurian candidate, I think. And he's a psyop to get everybody hating each other, liberals hating the
No, Ian. Do you remember? I said this to you before.
Divide and conquer and a whole bit. Right? It's all happening, right?
Well, the divide and conquer is already well underway. What Trump is, in my opinion, and this is a very strong opinion, and there's a lot of evidence to support this, and that Trump is the solution to the farmer looking out his window and seeing that his livestock has escaped the pen.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Like I say, luring you in.
Says, oh shit, the livestock are out of the corral.
Right.
And so they brought in Trump. I mean, you remember what James Fetzer was telling us on our show here? He's going to drain the swamp. We got a guy like Fetzer, as conspiratorial as they get, as educated as they get. He's both as educated as you can be and as conspiratorial as you can be. And this is a guy who is on the Trump bandwagon, lock, stock, and barrel. How is that possible? Because it worked. It worked.
Yep.
They gave us a candidate that all of the sheep who've gotten out of the pen could look at this leader and say, oh my God, there's the guy we've been waiting for. He's anti-establishment.
Right.
That's the guy we need.
This is interesting you're mentioning this because Kevin Barrett was talking about this on Richie Allen.
Yeah, he was. I heard that show today.
Okay. Is that where you're? Okay. Gotcha. All right. Yeah, he was saying basically that he's suckered in a lot of the alt-right, the independent medias who before knew there's a false paradigm, knew it was a big freaking show, right? Suckered in even,
So, Keith, are you a little louder?
Can you guys hear me now?
Oh, there you are.
Much better.
All right, I was on my iPad. I switched to my laptop now, so you can probably hear me a lot better.
Yeah, that's a lot better. What's on your mind?
I actually have some really interesting things that I'd like to share. Has anyone ever heard of Donald W. Scott?
Donald W. Scott. No, but I'm going to write that down.
Have you ever heard of mycoplasmas or mycoplasmas?
No, spell that for me.
mycoplasma.
Okay. Haven't heard of that one either. Are these both YouTube channels?
No, they're not YouTube channels. They're a mycoplasma is like some kind of, it's a supposedly genetically engineered organism that is responsible for all kinds of different neurosystemic diseases. And apparently these, what people say, and it could be proven, it could not be proven. There's tenuous links to things here and there. But what these apparently, and what this man, Donald W. Scott, who was, I have a lot of information on him here. He began a full-time study on neuro and systemic degenerative diseases, which are things like Gulf War syndrome. You ever heard of the Gulf War illness? A lot of people have heard of that.
Oh, yeah.
And apparently what he thinks is going on is the government, the theory that the government was behind the AIDS, like the creation of HIV and AIDS.
They were.
This is the same. This is basically the same kind of idea that mycoplasmas, which are these organisms, pretty much, they're viruses. They're like kind of diseases. Apparently, they have the idea here is that these biological weapons were released on the public, and almost all American citizens and apparently almost all people in the world are supposedly have them in their bodies. But they're not necessarily detectable, and they are responsible for these kind of neurosystemic diseases that we thought previously might have been because of DNA or just heredity. But what it is could actually be that the U.S. government creating these bioweapons has been responsible for all these diseases. It's this one, brucellosis. You ever heard of brucellosis?
No.
This is
That's
actually
a new one.
This is a really big conspiracy. This is a really big one here. I think everyone should go and look up Donald W. Scott.
Yeah, as you mentioned that, I'm just going to read you a line here. Mr. Scott is currently involved in intervenor status in the class action lawsuit of Graves versus William Cohen, DOD. The suit, filed on September 28, 1998, alleges that the U.S. Department of Defense was involved in, quote, creation, production, and proliferation of the AIDS virus, unquote.
Yeah, basically the whole idea behind this is this guy, he was a professor, and he quit his professing job, and he decided to instead start researching these like neurosystemic diseases. And I feel like the deeper he got, the more he discovered that they aren't naturally occurring. Like, these are things that were engineered.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
I wouldn't put it past the psychopaths in control to do such things.
We know for sure that they have on many, many, many occasions, going back for many decades, that they have been testing the public and the military at large with every and anything that they can, from viruses to bacteria to radiation. In fact, the well-known Stanton Friedman, I heard through Douglas Dietrich, and by the way, Douglas Dietrich, for you guys, Ian and Amy and anyone listening, if you're not familiar, one of my subscribers in one of the comment sections on one of our videos told me to look up Douglas Dietrich. In fact, I think it was the Dr. Joseph Farrell interview, where he was saying that I was listening to Douglas Dietrich after this person brought him to my attention. Douglas Dietrich is a remarkable individual, by the way, and I would recommend you guys check him out. He was saying that Stanton Friedman, who is a nuclear physicist, by the way, and there's no hiding that. He doesn't hide that. He was part of a program, and forgive me if I get my dates wrong, but I think it was in the early 70s, and that there was an airplane that flew across the United States, and it was either dumping or leaking radioactive nuclear material at such a high rate. There was this program or test that they were doing, and they basically irradiated a huge swath of the American population, so much so that is supposedly the reason that Stanton Friedman moved to Canada. So there's that. And by the way, anybody in this world of ours knows who Stanton Friedman is and knows what he's about. He's the guy all over, ancient alien, trying to convince you that aliens are coming to get you.
The one with the crazy hair. Is that the one?
No, that's
I
don't know how to pronounce his name. It's a Greek name.
Sokolov?
Yeah, something like that.
What's his first name? It's escaped me right now. It
starts with a G. Giorgio
Sokolov.
Yeah, that's it. That's the one with the crazy hair.
You guys see my screen right now?
Stanton Friedman.
That's the site I have on my phone right there. The one you're on right now.
It says here in the early 40s, researchers developed the technical capacity to isolate the bacterial toxin from the Brucella bacteria and reduce it to a crystalline form. Thus, they had the disease agent without the original bacteria in an extremely virulent form. This crystalline bacterial toxin was capable of diffusion by primary aerosol and by insect vector. The pathogen was tested in Britain, US, Iceland, and Australia, producing outbreaks of mystery diseases, variously labeled neuromyasthenia, Iceland disease, royal free disease, and others. The tests in the US were conducted by CIA military under the supervision of the NH and the CDC. Thus, these agents had a most compelling reason for obscuring the historical record.
See, those mysterious diseases are basically the same as the Gulf War illness. No one knew what that was. It's the same thing. And it
They were
says
testing it on people too, Canada and U.S. on unsuspecting citizens.
It says here that government records. It's on the same thing. It says that it says actual government records are reproduced that reveal plans made in 1969 to create a new synthetic virus, one which does not naturally exist and for which no immunity could have been acquired. Other documents reveal that between 1985 and 1989, while publicly labeling Saddam Hussein as an evil monster, the United States was secretly selling Iraq hundreds of deadly biological weapons.
That's the propaganda part.
Yeah, who knows?
So basically, that Gulf War illness was created by the United States government and then used against United States troops. Coming home from the Gulf War, they were getting the disease that was created by the United States that we sold to Iraq.
Around here, we don't believe what the CIA says. So
yeah, not a word.
Yeah,
Tons of salt are taken with every single word out of the CIA.
Yeah. There's another man, another person who was heavily involved in this. His name was Dr. Garth Nicholson. Apparently, a microbiologist, and he was trying to like tell people how to remedy these illnesses, these mysterious illnesses that no one knows where they came from. And it's really interesting because a lot of these diseases didn't really exist or didn't have much documentation before certain years, like Parkinson's. It has a list of them here. There are a bunch of like neurological diseases that they didn't really exist before, the 90s or the 80s, whenever this whole thing went down. Alzheimer's, things like that. And there was an increase in them, and it's unexplainable, and it's very interesting stuff.
This guy here, this Dr. Garth Nicholson, he was actually exposing how vaccines were causing neurological disorders. Okay.
That ties right into something else that I want to talk about. One other thing, but we'll talk about that later.
Well, go ahead and do it now because I've got a John Rappaport presentation that I want to put forward here. It's probably going to be a good 20 minutes. I'm just going to let it play, and it's pretty profound what is happening in the world, and this is almost related to what you're talking about, at least in the sense of neurology and what the elites and DARPA and people like Bill Gates are planning for the future of not only humanity but education and I should switch that around, not only education but humanity. So go ahead, if you got something else to bring forward, do it before I do this.
All right. Leading into what he said about vaccines there. I actually found this. It's a complete scientific study done by a national institute in Italy by multiple scientists.
What are you looking at there? Do you want to do a screen share and so we can all see what you're reading?
Yeah, I could do that.
If you're on your laptop, do you know how to do that?
I'm just on my iPod here.
Well, you should probably still see a green arrow on the Hangout screen over on the left. If you click
it's a disappearing toolbar. So if you tap the screen on the left side, you'll see a vertical toolbar, and then you tap the little green icon for screen share. There you go.
Well, what I was reading here, I'll find it real quick here.
There you go.
1 second. I'm just going to look at this. Basically what it was, contamination within vaccines. So not necessarily what most people would think of as this is a scientific study. There's really nothing here except this just scientific study. And what the study was saying was there was tons of trace elements within vaccines, and it was conducted by a scientific institute. It had absolutely nothing to do with it. Had no affiliation outside of just the scientific institute. And basically the whole study was saying that within these I don't know why it didn't work. within these vaccines, they're finding nanoparticulates of certain metals, titanium, all these different metals. There was
aluminum, barium, mercury. We know.
Strontium,
Everything
titanium.
No, you're talking about chemtrails as strontium.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
See,
Everything.
This specific study right here.
I have that PDF, and I'm trying to find the site that I picked it up from.
They used to use mercury. They used to use mercury as a preservative in the vaccines, and then it was too obvious to too many people that was not any fucking good for anybody.
Yeah.
So
right.
They went to an aluminum preservative. So, and it's, by the way, it still has the same effect. It's a neurotoxin.
See, if you look right here, you'll find the elements that they found inside of these vaccines that shouldn't have been there. See, there's aluminum. This looks like bromium, potassium, phosphate or something, lead, silicon.
Their argument is it's in safe levels, right? But what are safe levels? The safe levels get changed to fit what they're doing as well, because
that's right. That's the key word right there, is safe level. That's one of those words or phrases that they put forward because the definition of that word is nothing more than an opinion. It's not a fact. Safe to you is not safe to me, so therefore it's not a fact. It's an opinion.
Safe to the psychopaths that are doing this is a lot different than what safe is.
Exactly.
Well, if you look at the conclusion here on this article, it says the analysis carried out showed that all samples checked vaccines contain non-biocompatible and biopersistent foreign bodies, which are not declared by the producers of vaccines, against which the body reacts in any case. This is a quality control issue, which that's what she's saying. It's a quality control issue. I mean,
that's brushing it under the carpet right there. It's not quality control. Right now, I'll just go ahead and call BS right there. It's not quality control issue. They know freaking well what they're doing.
She's basically. I feel like what the lady, her name's like Antionetta or something. The lady who did this study. This is a scientific study. I think the reason why she would say something like that is probably because she might get criticized if she doesn't come out and say. But basically,
yeah.
Basically, though. I think she's kind of hinting that this is something else than exactly what. In any case, if the contamination is purely incidental, or if it is, who's to say? Who's to say? It could be, it could not be. But no matter what, these nanoparticulates of these certain metals, of all kinds of metals that you would never even expect, all kinds of different chemicals you'd never expect, they can accumulate in the body because they're non-biodegradable. They never will leave you.
That's right. They accumulate in the body. That's correct.
Yeah, the metals.
And now let me tell you something about me that you may not know. And that includes my colleagues here and those who may be listening. I'm married to a retired virologist. Okay? You guys know what that is?
She studies viruses?
Yep.
Well, she didn't just study them. She worked in a lab where her job was in the quality control department for a vaccine manufacturer known as Merck. Okay,
that's listed on here. It's listed on here.
Yeah, they're huge. Basically, her company, which was nothing but a couple of warehouses up in Gainesville, Georgia, they are responsible for making something like, and forgive me if I don't get a perfectly accurate number, but this is pretty close, something like 75% of all the vaccines that are put into the poultry industry, chickens, in this country, and something like 40 to 50% of the vaccines that goes into poultry around the world. Okay? So this is a huge, huge facility. And my wife is a retired virologist. She spent 26 years working in this one laboratory, and she was quality control for a vaccine, one of the biggest vaccine manufacturers for the poultry industry in the world. And I can tell you that it's not an accident that they have all these metals and all these chemicals and all these contaminants It is not a freaking accident.
Yeah.
These things are manufactured under very strict controls. And
yeah, it seems ridiculous that they think quality control vaccines. They're done in a laboratory. How could you get any more quality control?
If they had so much as a very minor contamination of, let's say, a mold or something that they didn't want, they would pull entire batches, and I'm talking huge amounts of vaccine.
See, isn't it funny that they haven't found any molds or anything like that, but the things that they have found are like heavy metals that stay in the body.
There are certain other viruses and bacteria that can get into that medium and contaminate the vaccine.
This goes into the conspiracy theory about them.
They did a lot of testing. They did rigorous testing. And it was a lab, and they were experienced, and they knew what they were doing. This is not willy-nilly stuff. And when their shit got contaminated, they had to trash huge batches of material that they had produced. So, once again, I'll put forward that if all those things that you just showed on that other page of all those other contaminants that aren't supposed to be there, that's not a freaking accident. There's no way that anybody can convince me that those are contaminants that slip by quality control.
Yeah, oops.
Look at these. Look at the list of these. Look at the list of these elements. You think all of these elements just slip by?
No, they use chromatography to look at this stuff too.
Yeah.
They use chromatographs, where it shows the peaks of each element inside the concentrated solution.
They have all kinds of pictures of them right here.
Yeah, there's your peaks right there. That's chromatography they're using there, right?
Spectroscopy. Thank you, Amy.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it could be that, or usually it's through a chromatogram.
This is tungsten. Tell me what tungsten's doing in vaccines.
Exactly. How the hell does tungsten slip by quality control? How does that accidentally get in there?
It's tungsten. Where does it doesn't even naturally occur in most places.
No.
They say it's a safe level, and it occurs naturally. The aluminum occurs naturally. They always say that.
Yeah, never mind that aluminum doesn't occur naturally unless it's bound to some other element. The nanoparticulates, natural aluminum, right?
Yeah.
Well, a certain amount of aluminum salts occur naturally.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's still bound with some other element.
Yeah, it's a compound.
It's not just pure aluminum. And so when you see pure aluminum, you know it's manufactured.
Yeah, metallic aluminum is manufactured. Yeah. I mean, this is just this is unexplainable, is what
I know. It's mind blowing, isn't it?
It's the tip of the iceberg too, right?
It's
no doubt.
And the biggest fact about this one is the fact that this is purely she never makes any real claims of anything. This is purely a scientific study. I mean, how can you refute this? It's a purely scientific study. She's not even claiming that these are put in here. That's all it is. It's a purely scientific study. Just showing what's
saying
in them.
This is what we found. The end.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
There's one paragraph of conclusion in the whole thing. That's pretty much her interpretation. But this whole thing is just pictures upon pictures identifying lead. There's lead in the vaccines. Lead poisoning. That's
mercury in vaccines too. They were even trying to sell it on mainstream news. It was actually good for you and stuff. I couldn't believe it.
Oh, I know.
To find that video clip, I was looking about.
It's amazing.
There were so many ridiculous elements found inside of this. Zirconium, one of the rarest elements. Zirconium. Zircon crystals are the most ancient crystals on the earth. How do things like chromium, how do things like these
just randomly wind up in?
Yeah, it was.
There's definitely a reason.
Those are just normal contaminants. Those things are everywhere. They're hard to filter out. We can't control.
Right.
We're just a sophisticated laboratory. We can't control everything.
Yeah.
No, we wouldn't hurt you. We
BS.
love you.
Look. We tested this. These are safe levels. Okay, everybody, just calm down.
The CDC has approved them, so that means it's
Everybody, just
it's safe.
Here's another thing about this. These were conducted in Italy, and most of these companies and most of these vaccines they're not even North American. They're in Europe. This one's from Germany here. Most of these are from Italy and Germany and countries in Europe. These aren't even in America. And you still see things like this. This is from the United Kingdom, you know?
Well, like I said, zirconium, it's everywhere, man. It gets in everything. You just can't. We're only a simple laboratory. We can't control everything. And we tested. It's safe, man. It's safe. Look, you guys, I'm telling you, it's as absurd as it gets, man.
The known liars said it's safe, Joe. So just trust them.
That's right. The known liars put us at ease. They reassured us that they tested vigorously on their safe levels. So what we need to do now is give your 1 day old baby a schedule of 109 injections or 109 different vaccines. Of course, we combine them, so it's only about 30 different jabs. And your baby's only a day old. So he'll be fine.
I think these few sentences here are very interesting. The quantity of foreign bodies detected, and in some cases, their unusual chemical compositions, baffled us. The inorganic particles identified are neither biocompatible nor biodegradable. That means they are biopersistent and can induce effects that become evident either immediately, close to injection time, or after a certain time for administration. Up to years, because they never go away. They remain in your body forever. They get stuck in certain. There was a part here. I read somewhere here that it said they can get stuck in certain muscles and end up, messing with the function of muscles, or they can get stuck in brain tissues or nervous tissue.
Causes severe neurological disorders.
Yeah. That's bioaccumulation. In fact, years ago when I was introduced to the idea of colloidal silver, and I was researching colloidal silver and the differences between the actual silver colloid and a substance known as forgive me right now. It's silver nitrate, and the difference is one has a colloid. A silver colloid is it's anywhere between 1 and 3 atoms of silver atoms in a cluster of 1, 2, or 3 silver atoms. It's considered a colloid. And anything over that, when you have clusters of atoms that are 4, 5, 6 or more, what happens is it becomes a bioaccumulative, and it sticks in the collagen of your skin and it turns you blue, giving you a condition known as argyria.
And it's permanent.
And it's permanent because it sticks in your collagen. It's bioaccumulative. It's not biodegradable. You cannot get rid of it. It turns you blue. You stay blue like a freaking Smurf for the rest of your life. And there's even a guy who is well known, and you can go look him up. I don't remember his name, but
I've seen him.
You just do a search for argyria, and you'll see this guy with silvery white hair. He's in his 60s now.
I think he's dead now, actually. I think
so you know the guy I'm talking about. He's as blue as a freaking Smurf because he made his own silver colloid, and he took too much of it, and he was making it incorrectly. He wasn't getting the small enough nanoparticles of 1, 2, and 3 atoms, and he was creating a silver. Crap! It just left me again. You understand what I'm saying? It's the wrong stuff. It's not good for you.
Well, what you were saying here about the babies, it says it's only obvious that similar quantities of these foreign bodies can have a more serious impact on very small organisms like those of children. Their presence in the muscles due to an extravasation from the blood could heavily impair the muscle functionality.
Oh yeah. Just like autism.
Yeah.
Yep. Parkinson's.
because autism affects more than just the brain. It affects the entire nervous system, and so
Yeah.
Yes.
extreme versions of autistic children have extremely poor motor functions.
Yeah.
Yep.
But they have communication. They can communicate with dolphins and things.
And they can count matchsticks.
Yeah. It's pretty it's just the fact that this whole study was conducted, and it just, why isn't this making any kind of news? You know, this never really.
Well, we
because
know
there's no money in that study.
We know why it's not making
Yeah.
any news.
There's
Because
no money
the
in it.
news doesn't want people to know about this stuff.
Well, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, they can't make any money.
Did
So-
you know that the pharmaceutical industry, the pharmaceutical lobby, is eclipsing the gas and oil lobby?
Yeah,
I'd believe it.
yeah, I believe it too.
And the
Because-
tobacco lobby
I believe that too. Speaking of
lobby.
tobacco,
combined. The pharmaceutical lobby has eclipsed the gas, oil, and tobacco lobby combined.
I wouldn't doubt it, because they're threatened right now.
The numbers, the money, the numbers are too big. That's
yep, it's all about the money. We know how I feel about money.
Aaron, do you have that video queued up, that Rappaport video?
I do have it. Are you guys ready for that?
Yeah, let's take a break and we'll listen to that. Amy wanted to go for a break, so.
Yep,
No.
yep. Speaking of tobacco.
Now, go ahead and go now, Amy, because I really would like for you to hear as much of this as you can.
Okay,
So
I'll
go-
be back in
go
about 3
now.
minutes. About
Go
3
now.
minutes.
Go now while I set this up, and then I'll get it going in a second here.
Okay.
All right.
She wanted to take a break, so.
Yeah, she's in a place where she can't smoke while we talk, so she has to go outside. I'm going to play a John Rappaport presentation on technocracy and what they are planning, and this involves DARPA, which, if you don't know, that's the Defense Advanced Research Project. That's an arm of the Pentagon. That's their research arm. Dr. Joseph Farrell playfully refers to them as the Diabolical Research Project.
Yeah.
Anyway, this has to do with education. What they want to do is create. They want students to wear a device similar to like a Fitbit or a Wii bit, you know, the bracelet that's like a pedometer where it monitors, you know, how many steps you've taken for the day or whatever, your heart rate and stuff like that, that they're pushing for, you know, people in athletics these days. What they want is a stimulus response, a predictable stimulus response in education. This is a very disturbing report from John Rappaport, and they are dumping huge amounts of money into this project. Bill Gates is on board. Mark Zuckerberg is on board with $50 million of seed money. Bill Gates has put, I don't know how much money into this. They're all on board. And what they want is to create a situation where they can absolutely predict the stimulus response of education. And this goes a lot further than just the classroom. And John Rappaport will lay it all out probably a lot more eloquently than I am. But this is some disturbing shit. And what they want is to be able to control. They want to inject people with these nano computer chips that will enter the blood, go into the brain, affect your neurotransmitters, communicate with each other, turn on and turn off certain instincts like fight or flight, you know, the fight or flight mechanism. This research and what they're doing branches into so many aspects of human life. It's way beyond disturbing. And that is this report is why I titled tonight's show that there's a game changer on the horizon. And give me just a couple more seconds. I've got this video ready to go. Let me turn my speaker on. And I'm going to play this.
Here.
Okay, you're back. Okay, I'm going to play this. This is, as usual, John Rappaport gives typically a 20 or so minute presentation. And so here it is, you guys. Pay close attention. This is creepy shit.
Hey, Jimmy. Hello, everybody. Good to be back once again. Wow, lots of stuff tonight. Logic breaks the trance. Logic breaks stimulus response. If Pavlov's dog could apply logic, he would realize what kind of experiment he was in. And he would stop drooling when the bell rang, indicating that he might get food. He would say, no, I don't want to be part of this. So what are we talking about? Stimulus response empire. The empire of the globe, a stimulus response. Bill Gates, the new Pavlov. For example, Bill's got a project now using something called, get this, the engagement pedometer in schools. He's breaking this out. He hopes to flood schoolrooms all over the world with this device, which is worn by students as a bracelet during class that measures whether they are engaged or not, whether they are bored or not with what the teacher is saying and doing. And this, of course, would be accompanied by videotaping of the entire classroom experience. And these two things would be put together. And there's even talk of somehow introducing MRI scans. How this
Let me use the show going in the background.
The engagement pedometer. See, Bill thinks that. Okay, I'm going to pause this for now. Keith, I need you to mute your microphone, please, because
Picking up the show.
everybody that's not speaking, there you go. Thank you very much. All right, back to John Rappaport. Education is stimulus response. That's all he knows. That's all he thinks about. So the student should not be bored. Well, maybe the student is bored. Maybe the student wants to think about other things, much more interesting and productive things. Or maybe the student is just tuned out because he doesn't know what's going on in the class. Or maybe he's not engaged because he already knows all the material. He's known it, but you see, these are not entered in. Engagement pedometer. So you can imagine what happens with the teacher. The teacher's called in for a conference. All right, we have a readout on all 37 of your students who are wearing the bracelets, and we have the charts up here minute by minute, second by second, in real time, along with the videotape of what you're teaching. And so we're going to show you the places where what you're doing and saying, your facial expressions, your gestures, whatever, all of, is producing a preponderance of non-engagement as measured by the bracelets. And so we will teach you how to readjust yourself to the procedure in class and how to teach by highlighting those moments where whatever you're doing is engaging the students. Now, you've got people all over the world who would say, this is a great idea. This is what we should be doing, of course, to keep the students interested all the time. No. This is stimulus response education. This is I do A, I get B. Everybody is now being patterned to think that way and to react that way and to learn that way and to live that way. That's what is happening. This is technocracy. This is what we're talking about.
I've addressed the subject from a number of angles before. The use of technology to run societies, civilization, to run it. We've got Mark Zuckerberg now jumping into this pot. He is now funding with $50 million of seed money a new project that will use wireless microsystems to change physiological responses in the body to enable drug delivery, medical drug delivery, and the treatment of neuropsychiatric disorders. Change physiological responses is the key there. Think about that. For example, suppose researchers decide, we want to change the fight or flight response of the body. We want to be able to do that. We want to have soldiers who have no flight response, only fight. Or we want to have in the population no fight response whatsoever. Huh? Or this could be used in corporate advertising. Get people to buy products, change their physiological responses, tune them up to prefer certain kinds of products, to be intensely reactionary to certain kinds of products in a positive, heavy quotes, way, to buy the products. Now, this is even being taken further. Boy. The aim is to be able to record people's thoughts, and allow artificial intelligence to read those thoughts, and then as a bonus to imbue computers, artificial intelligence, with more human-like or human-like brain qualities. That's a mouthful. So this could even be extended, if it worked, to telepathic alteration. Well, this person's having these thoughts. You see, we have the readout here. So what we want to do is change that pattern of thinking. Well, if we alter certain physiological responses in the body, then we can alter those patterns of thinking. So let's give it a try. Let's see what happens. Let me go on here, because now we're talking about DARPA, which is the research arm of the Pentagon. And indeed, DARPA has been doing experiments with the mice to plant false memories that don't exist, but now they do, and to remove existing memories. What would the long-term goal of this be? Well, to say, Mr. Jones, we want to replace certain negative memories that you have with false positive memories. This would be a form of therapy. Well, I'm not so sure that I want to get rid of all my memories. Well, don't worry about that. You'll never miss them. All we're going to do is just take away certain memories that you have that could be troubling to you or influence your behavior in certain ways. And we'll pick the right ones. You don't have to worry your pretty little head about that one. And then we'll replace them with very nice memories that never happened, of happy moments you never had, childhood experiences that never existed, and you won't know that that's what we've done. So as soon as the procedure is finished, then you will be remembering from time to time, here and there, experiences that you never had, and they will produce a sense of happiness. A sense of happiness. DARPA is also engaged in a program to be able to insert visual images directly into the brain, bypassing the perceptual, ordinary perceptual system, so that you would be walking down the street and all of a sudden you would see certain things in the street. in addition to what you already see. And these images would be programmed and put into your brain without your knowing it. That sounds delicious, doesn't it? I mean, wow, 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 wow. Technocracy wants to control, wants to control. This is, in fact, a continuation of MKUltra, the CIA mind control program. Let's face it. This is the more sophisticated version because MKUltra in its early days in the 1950s was mainly involved with drugs and hypnosis to try to influence behavior, to create assassins, to hypnotize people into doing things that they wouldn't ordinarily do, and then they wouldn't remember afterwards, and so forth. And I interviewed John Marks, who was the author of a 1979 book called Search for the Manchurian Candidate, which was all about the CIA's MKUltra program. And he had been able to put together a lot of information on various projects that had been previously buried and hidden inside the CIA. And Marx told me that in 1962, the whole thing at the CIA went darker than dark. It was already dark, but because certain revelations had come out in his book and in congressional hearings, the whole program was being sent into ORD, the Office of Research and Development at the CIA, and nobody would ever know. He was told by somebody at the CIA, you will never know what we're doing now, so don't even think about trying. Now, the conventional wisdom was, of course, that this program of MKUltra was stopped at the CIA. But inferring from what John Marks told me, of course, it continued. And it continues now. And it's spread out over many areas: university research, Pentagon research, funded by people like Bill Gates, Zuckerberg, and so on and so forth. A neurologist named Phil Kennedy, who researches brain implants, was known to give this quote: eventually, we're going to, and here's the quote, extract our brains and connect them to small computers that will do everything for us, and the brains will live on. Now, presumably, he was talking about after death, because many of these technocrats have cockeyed ideas about how if they would just put their and bring them back later on, they could be hooked up to computers. Well, of course, they assume that your brain is you and you are your brain and there is nothing else. And as I've discussed in great detail on this program before, that assumption has so many holes in it that you could drive a truck through, a fleet of trucks through that. Consciousness cannot be explained by the brain, period. Unless you believe, unlike conventional physicists, that atoms and subatomic particles, which obey laws of motion rigorously and rigidly and never vary from those laws, somehow has consciousness, these particles, which physicists do not believe, conventional physicists. So you see where all of this is going. The stimulus response empire, in the classroom, in the laboratory, in society, in the world, in hospitals, in conditioning centers, whatever you would want to call them. Well, we're going to send you for re-education. Well, that's already happening in psychiatrists' offices. the re-education in that case is done by drugs. Yes, we're going to give you a drug and it's going to make you feel better. And then the person takes say, an antidepressant, and sure enough, feels better, feels terrific. And then, in fact, feels so good that he goes over the top into a manic state in which he is now out of control and planning great acts of destruction. Or he falls into a deeper depression from which he feels there is no escape, and he rockets back and forth between the two. Well, that's a form of re-education. It's altering brain chemistry. But what these scientists now are looking at is a much more refined and subtle way of doing this with wireless microsystems, with implants, tiny implants that could, for example, be inserted into the blood system without going through the skull at all, and would somehow be coaxed and nudged up into the brain, where it would spy on neurons and report back as to what was happening at a neuronic level that would allow scientists to learn a great deal more about how the brain actually works from the inside, so that they could use what they had learned and these signals to alter neurotransmitter activity in the brain, neuron activity in the brain, physiological responses in the body, because the brain directs a great deal of that, how they could change the outputs of the endocrine system, hormonal outputs, and readjust all of that. And their cover story, of course, is that they are trying to cure diseases and disabilities. But behind that is this program. And I can think of no better ground level example of that than the one that I've explained and described in the classroom that Bill Gates is funding with a great deal of money, many millions of dollars, to revolutionize teaching at all levels. At all levels. And what happens when these researchers discover that some of these kids who are bored in class are really in a group that they could call outsiders? Well, you see, what we've discovered, Bill, is that these kids are not really bored so much by what the teacher is saying or not saying or doing or not doing. They're bored because they have a mindset in which they do not automatically buy into what they're being told. They have an independent set of standards, or they have an analytical ability to process information on their own. They have logic that breaks the trance, that breaks stimulus response. And so we are calling this set of students the outsiders. And we want to know, what do we do with them? Because they're not part of the paradigm. They're not part of the program. Well, I don't know. Let's see. What's your evaluation of these kids? What are the common denominators? Well, difficult to control, very difficult to control. They're not necessarily outwardly rebellious, but they keep their own counsel, and they don't buy automatically what is being sold. In other words, they do not respond to stimulus response. Well, I don't know. That doesn't sound very good to me, because what we're looking for here is predictability. We want the response that we desire to flow from the stimulus that we choose to introduce. So these outsiders would be, what would they be? Rebels. They would be, later in life, they could cause a lot of trouble. They could steer people away from being part of the, quote, community, et cetera, et cetera. You getting the picture here? In other words, we would be looking at the foothills here of Huxley's Brave New World. We have to figure out how to lower the number of such people in society, because they could be troublemakers. They could cut across the grain of what we're trying to do. Actually, this is a wonderful discovery that we've come across, you see, because we now have a way of identifying these people at a young age. And so we can try to steer them into becoming stimulus response children. And we can experiment on them in various covert ways and so forth to see if we can alter their pattern of response. And if we can find successful ways to do that, then we could introduce that across the board into this subset of children called outsiders and make them insiders. Now, believe me, this is not science fiction in the sense that the intent is science fiction. The intent is quite real. The intent to do all of this and more is quite real. The science part is up for grabs. In other words, these people tend to over-exaggerate what they're able to do because they want grant monies, they want funding from Gates, they, et cetera, Zuckerberg. But they have scientists all over the world who are engaged in one kind of brain research or another, who are busy little bees trying to bring these projects to fruition. That's where they're going. That's where they're heading. That's what they want. It's not just to disrupt, you see, because disruptive technologies are easy. You can put voices in people's heads that tell them all sorts of things. You can introduce frequencies into the brain that would cause anguish and pain and so on and so forth. I mean, there are acoustic weapons that'll do this for you. You don't have to go inside the brain in some subtle way. What we're talking about here is much more subtle and sophisticated than that. Because once you get into the arena of altering physiological response patterns, which are the natural processes of the body, once you get into altering those in a predictable way, in a repeatable way, all bets are off. All bets are off. All bets are off. And once you block a person's access to certain memories, if that's possible, all bets are off again. So I hope you're getting a flavor of what's going on. There's money behind this. Zuckerberg money, Bill Gates money, Pentagon money, which is tax money that's coming directly from the government. University research money that's coming from foundations, that's coming from pharmaceutical companies, that's being contracted out by the military, et cetera, et cetera. And the goal, again, finally, stimulus response. It's always been there since the earliest dawn of civilization. Every leader of a tribe, a clan, a group, a village, or whatever, an empire, has always been thinking of ways to create a desired response from a particular stimulus.
Hello, hello.
But now we're dealing with a tremendous wave of technology. The ability of an individual human being to reason, to use logic, to think, to analyze, to research, to investigate, to do all of those things at finer and finer levels is one of the best protections against a great deal of this technology. In addition to being able to spot it when it's being used and to understand that there are efforts to direct his behavior in certain areas. But if a person really knows what he wants, what he desires in life, what he wants to create in terms of the future, it is going to be far more difficult to influence the behavior of such a person than someone who just is, at sea, looking around, doesn't know, I don't know, whoa. Okay? A lot more to say about solutions at some point. But that's my report for tonight. Thank you much, everybody, for being there. Thank you, Jimmy.
John.
There you go, guys.
Wow.
Wow.
If that doesn't give you nightmares, folks, I don't know what will give you nightmares. And we looks like we are joined with my pal from San Antonio, Joe Finn. Hey, Joe, how you doing? You can unmute your microphone. We're good to go, buddy. Say something. Say hello. I'll introduce you around.
Hey, Joe.
He's got his microphone muted, and I cannot unmute.
Go on your icon, Joe, and unmute yourself.
Yeah, Joe, you got to unmute your microphone right now, buddy.
Or at the top of the screen, the microphone icon, just click on it.
Yeah, if you click like in an open space on the chat page, toolbar on the top will appear, and just click that microphone icon on the top. In fact, I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about here. Okay, I should be screen sharing right now. Joe, if you ignore all of this mirror image stuff going on, look at the very top of the page. See where they're right underneath of the word stop. The green bar says like screen sharing and then stop. Right below that, there's a camera icon, and there's a microphone. See, I keep touching it, and then it appears and it goes away. You need to tap the screen, and up will come this top toolbar that I'm trying to show you right now. And then you click that microphone.
There you are.
There you go.
Yeah. Hey.
Yes.
How you doing, Joe?
Howdy, Joe.
Hello.
Hey, Joe, how you doing, man? Welcome, and let me introduce you to my pal Ian and our friend Keith, who's joined us today for the first time, and our regular fixture and co-producer, Amy.
Pleased to meet you.
Very much a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So I know you've been listening. I'm seeing you in the chat box. What do you think about what we're talking about tonight?
Well, man, I tell you, I could get a case of diarrhea of the mouth here.
No doubt.
The floor's yours, man. Lay it out.
You were talking about brucellosis. My sister-in-law suffered with that back in the 70s when she lived in Iran under the Shah of Iran. She was there, with her father who was military.
How's she doing now? Is she get over it?
There are long-ranging effects of brucellosis. You can take away the active disease, but there are remnants that stay with you.
Yeah. That's how a lot of those diseases are.
Explain what that is.
Brucellosis, they claimed that it was caused by consumption of cow milk. However, based on your conversation, we can infer whatever we choose, I guess.
Yeah.
The lactic acid in there caused it? Or?
I understand it to be a cattle-borne virus, but I don't know the dynamics of it. I keyed up when y'all were talking about it because it's something I've heard about for years.
And what's it called exactly?
Brucellosis.
Brucellosis? Hang on just a second, because my wife is standing right here, and are you familiar with that, Nancy?
Y'all were talking about it.
He said they test cows for it. Is that he was saying that that's a bovine-borne virus? Okay, so you're familiar with that? Okay.
I thought y'all were talking about that about 30 minutes ago when y'all were talking about
Keith brought that up, and he brought up some paperwork and some scientific research papers on that subject.
Right, and it was interesting because he didn't mention the places where they were stationed, but she had a bad case of it. They weren't sure she was going to live.
And your wife was staying in Tehran on a military base?
Yes.
Have you ever heard, Joe? Have you ever heard of Dr. Garth Nicholson?
No, sir, I've not.
Have you ever heard of what was the other guy's name? I forget his name now. Hold on, 1 second.
Dr. Scott?
Dr. Scott.
Yeah, Donald W. Scott. You ever heard of him?
No, I think I briefly heard y'all mention him earlier, but I was going to scroll back and re-listen so I could get those and look them up.
Dr. Donald W. Scott. Yeah, he's was studying brucellosis, and I think he actually wrote things on it and how it's a degenerative disease that affects like various parts of the body and how it's related to these other diseases that are like neurosystemic kind of diseases that we were all talking about earlier, and how he believed that the origin of these was man-made, not necessarily, or at least the proliferation of them was man-made.
Right.
I tend to agree with that assessment. I did some time in the military. I was in the Navy myself. And a lot of the guys that went in the same time I did, we all seemed to get similar symptoms, different variations, but you know, when you look at it to the core dynamics and what the issues are, they seem to stem from the same place. You know, you had your Vietnam era guys that have, you know, depending on where they went in, where they went to boot camp, they're going to have this particular set of issues. And, you know, it's just really interesting. You can trace the issues and you can look at their PCS orders or their, you know, origin of service and where they went to boot camp and what years. And there's amazing similarities.
You think that's very interesting that a lot of people in the military have it, like the Gulf War illness, as we were talking about earlier. That is another one that's, you know, very commonly, that's a lot of people know about that one. Do you think that we said that one, or at least I said that one, it said in that article that we had there, the American government actually was selling biological warfare weapons to the Iraqis, and that could be a reason for that.
Oh, that's
Gulf War illness.
We have the receipts.
There's some validity in that. I don't necessarily know that would be the straight case, or that we'd have to do some looking at where these guys originated service, where did they deploy out of, and that's when you start seeing the correlations. The interesting thing that you have to realize also is with the enlistment contract, when you enlist in the military, and I didn't know this, and I have strongly suggested to both of my sons were going to go into military. I come from a military family. You know, great-grandfathers, grandfathers, I mean, it goes way back. But the real issue here is that, you know, I had to tell them not to go in because in that contract, it states that you are no longer your own person. You literally sell yourself to the military for pauper's wages, and they tell you they're going to use you as a test.
Cannon fodder?
As, you know, you're a monkey. You're a test monkey.
Cannon fodder. Yeah.
And the other sad part about it, I mean, it's so bad. You know, you get a sunburn, you can be court-martialed for destruction of government property, but they're pumping in crap that's going to affect you 40, 50, 60 years later. That's a tender subject for me.
Where do you think that that comes from? Do you think that they are the vaccinations that they normally give the United States soldiers, or do you think that it's from something else? Where do you think that?
I think that there's a lot of stuff. You know, when you're in the military, you're exposed to a lot of things just by virtue of what you're doing. So there's a variety of things that are just happenstance. Then there are other things that, you know, you can take geographics and assignments and throw them out there, and the only commonality is the where and the when they went through boot camp. And take, for instance, when you go into boot camp, you know, you get a series of shots before you leave the MEP station. Then you end up, at least when I went in, that's the way it was. Then you land in Great Lakes, Illinois. They put you in a bus. You get to the place. They start calling you a dickweed. The next thing you know, you're getting 500 different places. You know, you literally have 3 days of processing medical, and most of it's getting shots and this and that. And when you're processing in that first 72 hours it's a nightmare. And I mean, you know, then you go out to sea or whatever, and they're putting saltpeter in your food. You go buy beer overseas; it's full of formaldehyde. I mean, there's a number of things that you do the math, and it's like, really?
I've heard MREs have some horrible effects on your stomach. I've heard that one.
I can't speak to that specifically. I don't have any problems that I would directly relate to that sort of a thing.
It just seems like in general, it seems apparent now that the military they kind of use as guinea pigs, you know, that whole thing.
Oh, they if you read the contract, you know, everything's referred to when you're signing your paperwork. It's a telephone book. But when you're signing your paperwork, they refer to subchapter this and title such and such. And I mean, there's all these little references where you literally have to spend a month in the Library of Congress to figure out what you just said yes to. And they say, well, you should have read your contract. Well, really?
Right.
Exactly. You have to literally spend a month in the Library of Congress with reference books to figure out what you just said yes to.
Right.
I think that is so unethical.
It is unethical. Yeah.
And then that crap changes after you sign it, because it says that basically you're held to a certain accountability, and you have to do what they say for a certain time period, but they can alter that without telling you, and it doesn't breach the contract. It's really well written.
That is unethical.
So in other words, what you're signing is you're saying yes to the fact that they can do whatever they want to you under any circumstances at any given time without your knowledge or consent.
Yeah,
that is correct. And
it is the ultimate freedom giving or freedom relinquishing document.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's really kind of interesting. You know, you sign for 4 years, and then they usually have a reserve time on the back of that, and then you have an inactive reserve. So if you sign up for 4 years, in some cases, unless you're careful, you end up committed for 8, sometimes 12 years. And during that period, you're subject to recall without notice, all kinds of neat things, because you're in what they call the inactive reserves. You're active reserve, then inactive reserve, then you're
Isn't that what they call stop loss?
Yes. And the other thing is, when it comes time for your contract to be up, they don't really have to let you out. I mean, that's what you signed on the contract. They can if they decide.
No, they can change the contract and recreate all the terms without letting you know, and then just you're subject to whatever the new terms are at a whim.
Precisely.
That is just utterly disgusting.
That's
so, Joel,
no one should be signing up for any military service.
Well, you know, let me back this up a little bit.
Hang on, Joe. Ian, you got a question?
Yeah, Joe. So, what is your family? What is their view? Like you said, you're from a military family, right? And everybody's. What are they all asleep? Are you the only one awake out of your family, or?
No, you know, you got to look at, 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old kids. They don't know. And, when your father talks to you, when you were an 18 to 25-year-old and had no children, your dad would tell you something. You're like, yeah, fuck you. You don't know what you're talking about. And now the next door neighbor can say the exact same thing. You've been saying it for 12 months. But the next door neighbor says it, and it immediately has validity. But it came out of Dad's mouth. And it's not my kids to me. It's I've seen this dynamic, even when people are learning how to ride horses. Parents.
Vinny Eastwood calls that the seventh man theory.
Okay.
That somebody will say to you, "Did you know that 9/11 was an inside job?" And your knee-jerk reaction is that, "Get out of here, you crazy conspiracy kook." And then later on, somebody else says, "Did you know that 9/11 was an inside job?" And you might have the similar or same reaction, but after 4 or 5 or 6 times, you don't have that reaction anymore. And then on the 7th time, for no apparent reason, somebody will say, "Did you know 9/11 was an inside job?" And at that point, you say to yourself subconsciously, "What the hell? Maybe I should look into this."
Right.
Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff when people hear me say the stuff that I would say, and again, my younger brother, He signed up for the Navy. He did a stint. In fact, he was in Yemen when gosh, I forget which boat it was, got blown up by that terrorist in a little fishing boat. I don't remember what it was. The USS Cole. He wasn't on the Cole, but he was there in port at the time when that occurred. He was on the Roosevelt. But anyway, I tried to convince him not to go in because of all the issues, and he was like, no, Joe, I've seen how well you've done, blah, 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 this is great, and everything else. And I said, look, you don't get it. And then when he got in, he was like, oh, man, you can't understand until you're here. And I told him, well, that's the way it is. He says, and he told me straight up, he said, Joe, it's the newer, softer Navy than what it was when I was in, but it still was pretty rough.
Okay.
So remind us, Joe, you and I spoke, and I got some quite a lot of details when you and I talked. And for those of you guys listening, and if you don't know, I've got a relationship with Joe personally. I met him personally out in Texas. He's the neighbor of one of my best friends in the whole world. And Joe and I had an immediate kinship. We hit it off right away. And from the moment we met, through the duration of my time in San Antonio, it was just, we spent we did all we could do to spend as much time together as we did. He gave me an interview, which I have not published because it contains some sensitive material and I have not properly edited it. I don't have an editing software and I have no skills. And that's partly one of the main reasons. I just haven't been able to get it properly edited. But the point is that I know Joe personally, and Joe, do me a favor, do us a favor, and let everybody else know just a brief history of your military service. You spent some time in South America, if I remember correctly, and you feel free to just tell us what you want to tell us about your military history real quick.
Well, there's a lot of history. I mean, we did war games. What you're referring to in South America was the UNITAS, and that was a multi-national war game where we got together with Canada and all of our allies, and we were operating off of the edge of South America, doing war operations, war gaming. We weren't attacking anybody, but the whole point was we needed to get together and learn how to converse from one entity to the other entity. In other words, the Canadian anti-submarine warfare aircraft needed to be able to communicate with the American fleet on the water, or the submarines, or they needed to be able to communicate with other aircraft in the area, needed to coordinate with AWACS, with the Air Force, and in order for us to all communicate and operate with some sort of seamless capability, we had to work out the differences in the acronyms we used. We had to work out the differences in how we operated frequencies and dealt with our encryption and these sorts of things. So we found, and then with some of our allies, there were language barriers. I mean, even with the English, you try to talk to those limey bastards, and my God, they speak another language. So we had to come together and work together for a period of time so that we could all communicate and work seamlessly and smoothly. Well, that was a preparation for when we went to work over in Iraq and Iran and all that other stuff. So the so-called coalition building y'all were listening to on the news and everything, we had already done war games prior to anyone even talking about it.
So did you wake up after you were out of the military or during?
Well, it's kind of a funny story, and well, it's actually kind of an ironic story, I guess, more than anything else. I came from a family with military history on both sides, paternal and maternal, and we're all very strong, independent, American-minded people. The mentality of people in the 40s and 50s is very different than people now. I mean, we didn't have access to the information, but ultimately I had decided that I was an anti-disestablishmentarianism, and my religion was not that of anyone else's. I called myself a Myonian. I mean, I rejected my family's faith base and everything, and I had absolutely no desire to be in the military, but certain events in my childhood, And then I met this girl that, you know, she was really interested in security and predictability, and she came from a military family. And in order to we negotiated that I went into the military, and everything went from there. So it was kind of a lovesick puke, kind of went in and got himself in a mess. But, you know, I was kind of awake. I was very much a freedom-oriented person. I thought that the left had it, and then I listened to the right, and I thought the right had it, and then I came to the conclusion that they were two sides of the same coin. And when I was in the military, you know, I was about 18 and a couple of months. No, I was 18 and a half when I went in, and I had already, well, never mind about that. I was 18 and a half when I went in, and I already had a pretty good idea of what things were then, but I didn't understand the working function and how things tied together until I was on the ground, in the air, in the water. Then all of a sudden you start to figure out, oh, geez, this is not what they're saying, because you're listening to the news and then you're out there doing something. People say, oh, that's OPSEC, and that, or excuse me, operational security. We don't talk about this. We don't talk about that. And to some extent, that's very true. But there's a lot of stuff that isn't said. Take, for instance, in Iraq and Iran, when we went in and did our first deal in Iraq, we had been building up our military presence over there for 5 years prior to ever firing a shot.
And we already knew that we were going to enter Iraq.
Pardon me?
So we already knew we were going to enter Iraq years before.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the neocons had it planned out long before. Yeah.
It was in the script.
It was in the PNAC document.
PNAC document, Project for New American Century document. That's right.
Yeah.
And the 10,000
plan of the mid-1980s.
And I don't know how many pages. It was in the many thousands, maybe 10,000.
Oh, yeah.
If anybody remembers, let me know how many pages the fucking Patriot Act was.
Oh, it was probably 30.
Oh, the Patriot Act is Adolf Hitler's wet dream, buddy.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
It
Yeah,
is
the
so
PNAC document
amazing.
stayed on
So amazing. But, you know, in the 1980s, you got this 18-year-old kid who thinks he knows it all. And if you look at things back in the 80s, we didn't have access. I mean, we had TRS-80 Radio Shack computers that it took you 2.5 hours to create a dot matrix picture that looked like a Martian's head. And that computer, that mainframe that you used was 3 foot by 3 foot by 9 foot.
Holy.
You know, and that was to run your little trash 80 to make a dot matrix, and it would take it 30 minutes to print the damn thing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we didn't have the access to as much information as we do now. But you know, look at the impending financial situation that we're dealing with, and you go back to, you know, Nixon, old tricky Dick, and he took us off of the gold standard and removed any basis for, you know, a stable economic tool.
Legal
and
tender.
we went to straight fiat currency.
Legal
I mean, they were planning what we're dealing with now back then. We're way behind.
The real, my opinion is this, and I have a pretty in-depth opinion of this. The Cold War, my opinion of the entire Cold War is that it was basically a wool pulled over the American people's eyes. I believe the entire Cold War was fake, you know.
Yeah, it was coordinated.
Oh, yeah.
Except for one thing, Keith. Don't forget that there was an entire other population. In fact, there were two entire populations that you're not thinking about. One of them is the Russian population, and the other is the rest of the fucking world.
Well, yeah. I don't think that it was fake. I think there was some real tensions there. I think there was some serious issues. One of the greatest presidents in recent history, he came in and out of office before I was born, but John F. Kennedy was one of the greatest presidents of history.
Yeah.
This man.
I remember, these people feed off of they need public support to do things. So in order to gain public support to do things, they have to create an enemy.
That's right. That's why we have the dog and pony show called the television.
Well, they also take advantage of what's already there, and y'all already talked about this. Actually, I think in your last conspiracy or not, but you know, they create a problem, then they come up with a solution.
The
and
Hegelian
that
dialect
means greater rule.
Hegelian dialectic, yeah, right here.
But you know, when you look at this from an objective perspective, you know, a lot of this stuff. I mean, the Muslims wanted to do what they're doing all along. They're just being allowed and promoted and paid to do it.
No, they didn't. No, they didn't.
They've done it since Black Jack Pershing.
Did you listen to our show about a month ago, Dr. Joseph Farrell?
I did. I didn't hear all of it. I was at work, but I was listening. Yes.
Okay. I got news for you. If you didn't hear this part, and I know that we covered a lot of topics, and it wasn't a prominent, part of the show, you had to pay attention. And the fact of the matter is that the global jihad that we're experiencing now was started by the Kaiser.
Yep.
Okay. And it was perpetuated by the Nazis.
Oh, absolutely.
And then it was further perpetuated by post-war Nazis.
And then the post-war Nazis being the Bushes, in my opinion. But anyway,
well, there's a lot more to it than that, but they're certainly part of the cabal.
Absolutely. I mean, I was just being sarcastic.
Yeah, well, they're part of it. They created the war, so they funded the war.
The reality is that they're going to fight no matter what. And what we did,
I just wanted to remind you. I just wanted to correct, because a moment ago you said that that the Muslims, they've been wanting to do what they're doing for a long time. Well, maybe that part of that is true, but it's not because it's who they are or their culture. This has been taught to them for a purpose by a people of a very small handful with very
have you
direct intention.
Have you read the Quran?
Yeah, that's also a part of it too, I would say.
Because if you read the Quran, they want a world caliphate. That's always been.
Well, hey, look, have you read the Bible?
Yes.
They want the same thing. They just call it something else.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. We're talking about a gigantic book. It says a lot of things. You want to cherry pick one day in one part of one era. You could say, oh, they've been wanting this forever. Look, here it's in the book.
I think the book. I think the book.
1,000 years later, you could do the same thing with the same book with a different idea, and say, look, here it is in the book.
I think the book's an excuse. I think.
So I don't think it's fair to say that this is just because it's in the Quran. Look, most Muslims today are the most peaceful, most warm, welcoming, giving, loving, caring people, and I know several of them.
Yes.
Well, the Nazis only took 11%, but the reality here is, and I agree with what you're saying. I don't want to. I'm not going to argue that. I was too absolutist in what I said, and I apologize for that. Boy, my train just derailed.
Well, it's all right. We're all here for one common purpose, and that's just to express our opinions and get to the bottom of things, right?
Yes.
Everybody comes in at a different
perspective. I feel like that, it's my judgment that there were tensions. There were tensions between us and Russia, and those were fanned for the global purpose. They never let a crisis go to waste.
Yeah, that's what I should have. I was
okay. Hang on.
They always need to create the crisis.
No. Hang on. They don't always create the crisis, Ian, because, as Dr. Farrell points out very astutely, that there are, in fact, many factions. People have their own motivations, and so do groups. And there are many groups. And although they are mostly aligned, personal desire and personal motivations come into play.
I agree.
Okay. And they only work together when it's convenient for both parties.
Yeah.
Okay. And then they do, in fact, war with each other, just like me and my wife, and you and your girlfriend, you and your wife, you and your friend, you and your boss. You get along, and then one day you don't.
Mm-hmm. I think within America, at least, and I've held this opinion for a few years now, just looking back at how everything was going before World War II, basically. World War II was when a lot of this wasn't it wasn't, the roots were there for many years before that. But after World War II, I think is when it started to take off, as in where we are today. And you can see that as in during the Cold War is basically when a lot of those people finally seized the amount of power that they wanted to have. Before that, it was more of a plotting, scheming thing. And they did have a lot of power, don't get me wrong. But it seemed like that was when they finally took that opportunity, and they finally used the opportunity of the big, scary commies, who in reality weren't anywhere near as scary as they described them. Were they still a threat? Yes. But were they the threat that was described? I don't believe so. And I think you can argue for that.
The point out, yeah, I think you're right, in a large part. The point I was trying to make a moment ago is that sometimes, and like you said, there are things that happen that are a little bit out of their control, beyond their control, outside their control. And when things happen, like a natural disaster, for instance, they will take advantage. And that's exactly what he meant when Geithner said that. Never let a good crisis go to waste.
Yeah. Rahm Emanuel.
Sorry, Rahm Emanuel. But I mean, look, if you're, let's say you're a neocon and you're working with the commies, you're working with the Russians, and you're one of this inside group portion, and you're working with an inside group in the Russian government, and something happens on the border, and it's that's completely separate from the deal you have going on, you're still going to take advantage of whatever happened.
Yeah, of course.
So whatever the crisis is, the savvy, those with the ability and the know-how and the money and the finances and the connections, they're absolutely going to take advantage of those situations.
Yeah. But I do believe, it's clear that there was tons of propaganda during the Cold War. Fear is the biggest weapon used by, those who wish to control everyone. It's the biggest weapon because people react to fear. When people fear things, they'll do what they're told.
That's when they get their bills passed and their agendas put through.
Yeah, every time.
If it wasn't for fear, they wouldn't have the ability to have control of this number 2 thing that is the most powerful weapon, and that is self-censorship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just look at what's going on with Trump right now. The fear is that Muslim terrorists will sneak in. They'll slip between the cracks to get in the country, right? So the fear is based on that too for the whole ban, right? But it's a false sense of fear because most, if not all, of the Allah Akbar jihad attacks in the U.S. have been hoaxes.
Yep.
Drills carried out by a DHS, things like that, right?
I have a good question. Do you think Trump's an oligarch?
I think he's a puppet of the Zionist cabal that runs America. That's what he is.
No, I think he's an agent of the oligarchs. We already have an oligarchy, and that you just don't know who they are. Actually, we do know who they are, but you don't hear about them.
Right.
Unless you're listening to alternative media.
Or conspiracy or not, here we come.
Yeah. There's a plug right there.
Pipe up anytime.
I completely think that Trump, this whole thing is, I think it might be obvious to you that it's orchestrated, but I think the entire thing is orchestrated, and it has been orchestrated. If you look at the things that Trump was saying, 20, 30 years ago, the 80s and the 90s, the things that he was saying then, this whole thing has been orchestrated, and this was the perfect time that whoever came up with the whole Trump idea could clearly see that at this point in time, the American public are basically sick of our own political system, and we feel like we no longer have any control of it, which is true. But the thing is that this was the perfect time to put in an authoritarian into power. Was a time like this.
Can I bring up one thing that I discovered? Apparently there was a heavy metal magazine that was published in, I believe it was April of 1990. I could have the month wrong. But it had a story in it where President Trump is creating a wall. Now, I'm sorry, but I think that they had Trump slated for his role in this script a very long time ago.
Yeah. See, that's exactly what I was saying.
You know,
because
it is all a script. It's a play.
Well,
We're
you gotta
watching,
remember,
you know.
he's related to to Hillary Clinton through
Well,
a long
yeah,
chain of bloodline.
I understand they're
he
related,
chose-
but my point is that what we're seeing, none of it is organic. That all of it was plotted, planned, written.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we're not seeing anything.
that becomes more and more obvious if you look at the things that Trump was saying in the 90s and 80s. He said, "Oh, you know, I don't want to be president, but if I have to, I will." You know, he said all kinds of hints.
Say that.
Just hints, just like he already knew that it was going to happen.
Yep.
He was saying stuff like that all the way back in the 80s.
Yeah,
That's right.
exactly.
That's what he's saying, yes.
He was already dropping hints.
You know, we all are very well aware that in terms of technology, that the military is something like 50 to 75, some people say 100 years ahead of.
Some people say several hundred years.
Well, we don't know. We don't know. We just know that they're way out there, way ahead of us.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the point I'm trying to make is, why wouldn't we apply that same consideration to the political arena when the people we're talking about are in fact very clever?
Yeah.
They would rather you think that they are ignorant and dumb and uneducated. They would much rather you think them idiots. They're happy for you to think that they're idiots. And that's the big thing. I've had a problem with that for a long time. Is you'll hear pundits on the radio and on the television and in the bar say things like, "This guy's an idiot. He doesn't understand bliss. And this guy's fucking dumb and he doesn't understand that. And he's out of touch and he doesn't know." And blah, blah, blah. That's fucking bullshit.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, granted, some people are smarter than others, but the fact is, these people we're talking about are not dumb.
Yeah, like Trump.
If they've gotten to that level,
they are ahead of us.
Put out into the
just
public,
like technology. They are ahead of us. They are ahead of us by 50 to 75 to 100, maybe hundreds, plural, of years.
So coming back to technocracy, which John Rappaport.
Oh yeah. We didn't even get to comment on that. That was creepy shit, right?
Yeah.
They've been doing this mind control since probably even earlier, I'd say, than he said. 50s for sure. Now it was kind of funny to me that he'd mentioned 1962 was when the CIA said basically, "Oh, we've stopped doing the MK Ultra program."
I'm glad you picked up on that, because I actually put a note down to talk about that.
Now that's funny that he mentioned.
It went darker than dark.
Yeah, that's funny when he mentioned 1962, because the year before, what happened the year before? John F. Kennedy was murdered, okay? The year before that.
Yep.
And what I'm getting to here is that I could show you guys a video right now that shows that Jackie Onassis Kennedy was hypnotized to shoot her own husband in the side of the head in that car, okay? And there was all the triggers that were placed alongside of the roadway in the stage set they had. It was like a movie. It was like they steered them off to the side street, remember? So it was all a staging ground, okay? And there was all these triggers, like the Umbrella Man, the Nazi salute guy,
the Bush lady,
the lady in red and black, ladies. And these triggers were triggers for people that were involved in this mind control, what I would call a
Ian, they had bullet holes in the windshield, in the hood of the car, on
there
the
was
trunk
other
of the
shooters,
car.
yeah. But there's a video that will show you that Jackie Onassis was actually hypnotized with a triggering.
And I'm not saying that Jackie was not like an MK Ultra, sex pet or whatever, because honestly, in hindsight, if you think about some of her appearances on video, She does seem like she's under some freaking spell.
Well, I'm going to
She
screen
seems-
share right now.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll show you this video, okay? I'm going to show you the Zapruder film, all right? And it's a video.
Joe, feel free to pipe up anytime. I haven't heard you in a minute. Did you walk away or what happened?
His mic is muted.
Oh, I'm on the other
My
page.
computer's running really slow right now.
I'm here. I just been kind of listening. I didn't want to dominate, and I kind of did that for a while, and I apologize for being that rude.
Oh, no. I would prefer listening to you because you've got more experience than all of us put together, buddy. I had you on for a reason, and I've asked you before if you would come on and give us an interview. And this is just an introduction to who we are and what we're about. I know you've been listening to us, but this is an introduction to everyone else, to you is what it really is. I really just want people to get familiar with you and have you get familiar with talking to us on the show. And
now you can
I would like to have you back. Hang on, Ian. Just give me one more second. Joe, I would like to have you back, and I know I've asked you. I've got another military man who is a personal friend of mine who lives here in Atlanta, and I've asked him also. He's a younger fella, and he's been over to Afghanistan, Iraq, and modern times. So I would like to do a show with you and him, and I would talk about military, talk about some, you're both veterans. I would like to talk a little bit about war experience, whatever you guys are comfortable with. So I would like to try to schedule both of you guys.
I think that'd be a lot of fun. I've certainly enjoyed listening in on the. I haven't listened to all of the shows you've done, but I've listened to probably better than 2/3 of them, and it seems like a lot of fun.
Okay, go ahead, Ian.
Definitely a mind stretcher.
Are you guys watching my screen while we're talking here? I'll show you.
Yes.
Okay, now watch. You'll see a white marker right in here in the top, in the middle, on the grass. Okay, and it's an identifying white marker. Okay.
I think that was the range and aim.
What happens here is that she shoots her husband in the side of the face and flicks a gun over her shoulder. Now, they're going to show it a few times through here just to show the actual. That white marker is where the gun lands when she flicks it out of the car. If you watch her hand really closely, you'll see her flick that gun over her shoulder onto the grass. Okay.
Ian?
Now, there's a lot of triggering things that are they're unusual. There's an umbrella man standing on the side of the road. There's also a Nazi salute guy standing there doing a Nazi salute.
Back it up and play it again. I want to see that whole
It's going to go through it here. And there's a brown lady that comes running down to the grass and picks up the gun and puts it in her coat. Now, this video goes on for quite a ways, it looks like here. It's 14 minutes long, right? But basically, if anybody wants to watch this, I'll put a link to this video. I can't put a link in the chat.
Just, Ian, back it up and play it again from the beginning. I want to see that whole loop again. I want to see go all the way, but I want to see it over and over again.
The thing that I find interesting, we've always felt like there was more than one shooter. I mean, if you look at that rifle, there's no way that he could have took shots from that range 3 times and hit his target.
No, he was shot first. Like, he was shot from a distance into the neck. And then this is what happens after that shot hit him in the neck. Right? Or chest or whatever it was. He leaned down because he had been shot, right?
It does look like the bullet's exiting that part. It doesn't look like it's entering. On his head, it looks like it's coming out. It doesn't look like it's going in. Do you see that? The blood is projecting, it's spurting outwards. It's not going toward his wife. It's going outwards.
Now, yeah, this video, he's probably talking about that. I can't play the audio on here, guys. Sorry about that, but he's basically probably just talking about.
There clearly was at least.
Yeah, here's the lady that ran down to get the gun.
Yeah, Joe's right. Joe's right. They had him. There were at least 3 shooters.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. No, I'm not debating that. I know that for sure. Yeah.
This business you suggest about Jackie doing it, I'm
no. I don't think.
I'm having a hard time with that one. I'll have to watch it.
Well, we haven't even watched. Well, anyways, okay. Well, I'll leave the link for you, and you can watch, and you'll see her. You know, this is a long video. It's like 14 minutes, right?
Well, I've watched several versions. And I like the colorized ones better, of course, but I don't know. That
Unfortunately, I can't play the audio because it doesn't come through on here. So that's the only problem.
I just didn't see any gun, Ian.
There's a mark on the grass.
I saw where it looked like she might have used her right hand, and you see the glove as though she might have flicked something over her shoulder. It looks like it could have been something like that, but there was no gun. There was nothing came out of her hand.
I don't know. It looked like something came out to me on one of the run-throughs.
Well, the strange thing also is she would, you know, the way that it's coming out, she would have had to reach around and put the gun, you know, at a pretty odd angle to cause the backside of his head to blow out, you know, for us not to be able to see it. And that's the one thing that you're not taking into account here is the amount of head that was removed by that shot. You know, and the other thing that I find really, really interesting is, you know, his brain and that portion of skull that was saved disappeared.
Well, all right. Before we go down that road, I want to make the point regarding the angle of the incoming projectile. A large piece of his skull came out the back of his head and landed on the trunk of the car, and she reached off of the back to pick it up. So no matter what it looks like, and I know that Keith said a minute ago, it looks like that the bullet was spraying forward, like it came from behind or came from the side. That's not true, and it can't be that, because in the other footage or a more backed out, this is obviously zoomed in. You can see, and we know very well, full well, you can see it. Big piece of his head comes off the back and hits the hood of the car. She reaches for it.
She climbs right on the deck lid and gets it.
When you're hypnotized, you can do things that you not normally can do. You could probably have.
Ian, I understand. Let me make this other point regarding being hypnotized. Here's what I think.
How'd she shoot Connolly?
Yeah.
No, she did. I'm not saying she shot everybody. I'm saying I agree that there was other shooters. I already said that.
Okay.
I made that clear. I'm just saying that she was involved in this thing. Okay, guys, if you guys doubt this, how do you explain an umbrella, a guy standing there with an umbrella on the side of the road? A guy standing there doing a Nazi salute on the side of the road. And
I can explain both of those.
Yeah, me too.
They're triggering tools. They're what's triggering.
They could be, Ian. They're not guaranteed. There's no guarantee that that's what that is.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I see the possibility, but at the same time, I don't know if there's exactly sufficient evidence. But I do think that it's a possibility. I keep an open mind toward it.
I also agree totally. It could be a possibility. There could be, but there's no guarantee that that's what that is.
Because he was already shot before she did what she did. He'd already been shot because he was already leaning down with the bullet in his neck or chest or whatever it was.
The other thing, if they were going to do it at such close proximity, it really amazes me that all the Secret Service, they were loaded on that vehicle behind them. Everybody behind the president was safe, but there was nobody there. I mean, look at the video. There was nobody.
They were called off.
They were.
They stopped, and that's not on the film where they stopped the cavalcade.
We have them on film being called off, waved away from the car.
Yes,
breaking protocol,
shrugging like "say what" sort of an attitude. Absolutely, they're
what the
confused.
fuck are you talking about?
I mean that
what?
You've got to understand that there are processes and procedures. Whether you're a policeman, you're a lineman on a Navy boat, mooring a ship, there are certain rules that you follow because those rules have been written in blood. Somebody died because somebody did not do something a certain way.
That's right.
And something as massive as the president, and all of a sudden he's in an open car with no protection. There's nobody in front of him. There's nobody beside him. And there's nobody within 10 feet of the back seat. I mean, that's insane.
And they were let off the side street, too, for the staging ground.
All protocols were broken, man. Windows were left open on buildings.
So anyway, my point to begin with before all of this was basically that that, I don't know, it just kind of like made me remember about this incident, this video I'd seen. This isn't actually the one I watched. They showed more or less those people standing on the road and stuff. But right after this is when they started closing down the MK Ultra, and they changed the name and continued it on, right? A year after this. See, so it just was interesting how he mentioned that year, 1962.
Right, okay.
Zach, our pal in the chat box, and by the way, I would like to say publicly, Zach, I can't thank you enough for the gift. This microphone, you guys don't know this, but Juxtapose, he upgraded to a better microphone, and he sent me his old one, which happens to be this really awesome, it's called a blue snowball with a little tripod, and we've had very much trouble trying to get it to work with my computer, and apparently it turns out that there's a USB 3.0 and a USB 2.0, and that's the compatibility problems I'm having. So that's the same trouble I had with my headphone set. So thanks for that, Zach. But anyway, Zach, I wanted to bring this up. He said in the chat here, he said he has concrete evidence that concrete evidence of hypnotization. And one of these days, I'm going to get Zach to open up and tell us about this other experience that he had pertaining to off-world entities. I won't go
I'd be fascinated to hear about that.
So far, he hasn't been comfortable. He alluded to it a long time ago, and I haven't been able to get him to open up about it. And one of these days, I'll get him to talk to us about it. He had an experience, and he's not comfortable talking about it, so it must be serious.
I would drive to Atlanta to sit on the porch and chat with this guy.
Me too.
Well, Zach is not in Atlanta. Zach, the guy I'm talking about right now, he's talking to us in the chat box. He's actually lives in Pennsylvania.
I
Well,
actually also live in
I
Pennsylvania.
drive to Pennsylvania for that too.
Ditto.
The thing is that nobody has to drive
China.
anywhere. All we got to do is ask him nice enough, and he'll come on the show. We've had him on. He's talked to us. Zach has been on here a bunch of times.
You said Pennsylvania, correct?
Yeah.
I live in Pennsylvania, and I actually have a similar story about extraterrestrials. November of last year was extremely active with. There's multiple stories that I have just November of last year between me, my brother, and my very close friend.
Wow.
It seems like Pennsylvania in particular is actually a very hot area for those kinds of things. I'm not quite sure why. It might be its proximity to New York and the big, just a large city and just a large area of dense population or something.
Speaking of that,
let me say this real quick, Amy, and you can have the floor. There's something weird about Pennsylvania. It is one of the 13 colonies, and Philadelphia, what used to be, it was the original capital of the United States. So go ahead, Amy.
I've been out here on Long Island, and about, a couple of months ago, I was at one of my friend's house, and I noticed this, it looked like a grouping of 3 stars. One was brighter than the other 2. But there was something weird about it to me. I said, something just doesn't, I'm getting a feeling from these 3 stars. And I kept looking at it, and I noticed it was in the same place at 7 o'clock, and then the next night it's still in the same place. And I did take some photographs of it, and at one point when I was, holding my camera up to take a picture of it, the brighter of the 3 suddenly flared up really bright on my phone. I went, whoa, and of course, it has this damn delay. When you hit the button, it doesn't click right away. So I didn't get that, because by the time it took the picture, it was back down to its original intensity. But it's always there, and it seems to be lower than the clouds, because I can see it. after about a week, it dropped in light intensity, so you can just barely see it now. And I don't know if it's because I could see it so well and knew that something was weird about it, but I can see it during the day. You know, it's kind of hard to make out on when it's cloudy, but like if the sky's blue, I can see it. It's still there. And it can't be that high up because on cloudy days, sometimes I can see it. And it's been sitting out there about 35 to 40 degrees up from the horizon, just sitting there. And I know that out here on Long Island, there's no mountain range that's going to be that high up that could be putting out that light. I mean, it's just sitting there. And it's been sitting there every time I come over and I look, it's there.
I actually have a really fascinating story from one of my friends that two of my friends were together actually when this happened, and it was a direct like contact, like seeing some kind of alien entity or some kind of a supernatural entity. It was November of last year, and I actually checked the internet for November of last year to see like a UFO sighting thing, and it seemed like in November Pennsylvania was extremely hot with UFO sightings, particularly, which I thought was very interesting. But my friends, two of them were out in the woods and they were coyote hunting, and it was like, 3 or 4 in the morning, and it was November, so it was kind of cold. And they were out there, and they said that they saw like an 8-foot tall, roughly, extremely skinny gray figure, like standing, and they were completely terrified when they saw it. And he had a spotlight, one of my friends, but every time he'd click it, it would die because the battery was going dead on it. So it would light up for a few seconds, then die. So they were lighting this thing up, and they would see it, and then the flashlight would die. And then they just started shooting because they had their guns for coyote hunting. They just started shooting at it. And eventually they went over to where it was standing to see if it could have just been like a tree or, just something, just an optical illusion of some kind. But there was nothing there that could have resembled that at all that they could see. And then they had to walk the whole way back, 3 or 4 miles actually, through the woods in order to get back to one of my friends' house. And the whole way through the woods, they said, it felt like they had like a pain in the back of their heads. And it felt like every time they'd be walking, they were completely terrified, and they didn't want to think about this thing. They were trying not to think about it, but every time they'd start talking, they would immediately start talking about it. Like it would re-enter their brains. It was extremely strange. And when my friend got up to his house, he said he saw like a beam of light shining down. Like it looked like a giant flashlight shining down from the sky, and he didn't know what that was. He thought that was unexplainable. And weeks after that, for a while, he said that he would get this feeling and he would see that thing he saw that night at certain times. And another very interesting thing that happened to him was directly above his house, and his dad and his brother noticed this. He was at his house, and he heard loud bangs, and no one knew what it was. And his dad and his brother thought like, he was setting off fireworks or something like that. But he looked up to the sky, and up in the sky, he said that he saw the strangest thing, like purple streaks of light were flashing across the sky, and it would go from one area to another, and like it would seem like it would hit something up in the sky, and then it would make these loud booming noises, and he completely had no idea what that was. And his dad and his brother heard them too. They were so loud.
Weird.
Wow,
So
crazy stuff.
In case you guys don't know, tonight, within hours of each other, there's going to be a full moon, a lunar eclipse, and a comet.
I already missed the lunar. I already missed the lunar eclipse. I forgot all about it. For me, it was 2 hours ago.
That's a bit too cloudy here.
Hours of each other, all three of those things: comet, lunar eclipse, and a full moon.
The lunar eclipse should happen for everybody that can see it at the same time.
Yeah.
So
right. I've got a
it's
full
already
moon
happened. It's already happened.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's a bit too cloudy for me to see that.
I was trying to remember to actually bring that up, and if I would have remembered, I would have actually paused the show and walked outside. If there was anything there, I would have tried to film it with my cell phone. But yeah, it totally slipped my mind. As usual, we get into some good conversation.
Anyway, so we got about 10 minutes left. Does there anybody have anything else on their mind?
Yeah, there is something. Amy and I had previously discussed a story that she has relating to her experience with the website known as Above Top Secret. So, Amy, give it to us.
Okay. I joined Above Top Secret in 2006. And eventually worked my way up to being a silver contributor, which is just under gold contributor, and contributing a great deal to the website. And then when I first wrote my analysis piece called The End of Entropy, that first initially I put out the framework for what we could create on this planet that was, bottom up, no rulers, ethical solutocracy sort of a thing. It was a piece called The End of Entropy, I think I said. And I posted it on the website and got quite a lot of people all excited. I also posted the original version of my novella called The Abundance Paradigm. Got a lot of excitement from that too. And then as time went on, I'd see people discussing problems that, this way of doing things would solve for. And I would go into threads and say, about this problem, have you considered this, that, and the other thing? For more, see my thread, which was on ATS, called The End of Entropy. And, I started pointing people that were discussing these various problems to my post on ATS. And it wasn't too much longer that I started getting backlash from the management team there. And I started being told, stop that, you're spamming. And it's like, I'm not spamming. I'm trying to address these problems and giving people something to read on your site. Well, we went around and round on that, and eventually they banned me for spamming.
Nice. For spamming their own site.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
So I just thought that was rather an interesting experience.
And I had also heard somewhere that the website Above Top Secret is actually CIA created and or run.
Yes.
Yeah. What about that before it's news? I don't trust that one either.
I don't know much about the management on that site, but I know they let an awful lot of garbage on.
Yeah. That's a fear mongering.
Yeah.
What about Above Top Secret? How do we know it's?
Well, let's put it this way. A friend of mine, I've been sort of out of touch with him now, but he used to be a gold contributor on there, and he knew a lot of people. And the rumor already had been going around that it was CIA before they wound up banning me. But he said that he could confirm that indeed we were dealing with a CIA operation, because eventually they got fed up with him too. And here's somebody providing a large chunk of their content as a gold contributor, and him too. So...
Well, you guys, just as a point of logic, we know, based on the research that we've all done and shared, we've all seen enough evidence to know for sure, without any doubt whatsoever, that the CIA is very, very actively engaged in the truth movement.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So so that's a given. So that's a given. Now, my question is, and it's not really, it's more rhetorical. What would be the signs that would be a giveaway? what would logically, what would the CIA be doing with the money at their disposal, which is virtually limitless? $1 trillion goes a long way. How many times have I said that? What would they be doing? What kinds of things would they be doing? Would we see footprints of the CIA, and what would we see? And given the sophistication of the organization itself, I would suspect that places like ATS would absolutely be the kinds of places they themselves would create and manage.
Yep, I agree.
NSA as well, because
besides the troll army, they would have all of their bases covered. They would have everything from low level to high level truthers. They would have the trolls. They would have people who have legitimate channels.
Yep.
They'd have the Alex Joneses. They'd have the Young Turks. Everything from little to big.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's like full spectrum dominance.
Thank you. Good.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
And of course, on those particular sites, anybody that had anything innovative or brought truth that they didn't really want out there would wind up banned.
You got to remember, Stratfor is Alex Jones is under Stratfor. Okay?
Yes.
And they're a data mining operation. They're a CIA data mining operation. So whoever signs up on InfoWars or visits InfoWars page will be data mined, right?
Yes.
You visited that site. So
you data mine everywhere you go.
Exactly. But that's just
on and off the internet.
Part of it, right?
What's really interesting.
Hey, didn't I tell you? Do you remember the other week, last week or the week before, I told you the story about the guy who had a 14-year-old daughter who was starting to get targeted mail, junk mail from literally from the store Target, the Target store, right? Okay, everybody knows Target.
The one that failed in Canada
and they were sending her mail that was baby clothing and formulas and diapers, coupons and shit like that. And the father of this 14-year-old girl got pissed off, and he went down to Target and he raised hell. There was a whole story about this. And he raised hell to the manager. Why are you sending my daughter this shit? She's 14. Well, it turns out his 14-year-old daughter was pregnant. And Target knew that she was pregnant because of her purchases.
Yeah, exactly. Commercial targeting.
Because she changed her diet in such a way that triggered a pregnancy probability in the algorithm. And they knew she was pregnant before father knew 14-year-old daughter was pregnant.
All the way back in the 1980s, I bought a little cheap 380 semi-automatic pistol. And then the next thing I knew, I hadn't even bought bullets for the damn thing. And next thing I knew, I had the NRA sending me mail to join the NRA.
Jeez.
And then I started receiving advertisements for 380 automatic ammo. Now, this was back in the 80s before we were anywhere near as sophisticated as now. And they could keep track of your purchases and activities then.
Yep. I know that I had, I don't go shopping online because, by golly, I don't have any money. But I was hoping to find out what kind of prices were on pepper mills, because I wanted to eventually, if I ever got some money, get myself a pepper mill. And I just wanted to get a feel for how much they ran. And so one time I went out and looked at pepper mills. And do you know that that's the only thing I ever see ads for? It's pepper mills.
So speaking of technocracy, like John Rappaport was saying, they use this technocracy to shape your way of shopping, shape your way of eating, shape your way of living, right?
Yep.
Through this technocracy. that they've created, right? Because the bigger companies have lots of money to place all the advertisements all over your face 24/7.
Well, we're dealing with psychopaths, and what they want is a guarantee. They want predictability.
That's right.
Yep.
They don't like taking chances that they might actually lose a little bit of money once in a while.
Well, that's
right.
kind of like when you go to school, you got your kid. Like I look at my sons, you know, they went to college. I didn't, but I have a better education than they got, and I didn't even finish high school. And the reality here is they're being taught what to think, not how to think. And if you look at the process and procedure, I mean, we're constantly nonstop bombarded by advertisement and everything. And that stuff numbs you. It tires you out. It strings out your attention.
Yep.
And they are actually causing people to have attention deficit disorder. You try to sit down and watch a 1950s movie and people are going to sleep because there's not enough action.
That's right.
You know, we're addicted to the speed, and that speed is what's destroying us.
Yep.
I've noticed, and I wanted to tell this quick story about targeted marketing. But I've also noticed, and I'll tell you that in a second, when you watch the television, if you turn, in fact, the best way to notice what I'm about to tell you is to not actually watch the television, but to turn around in a darkened room when the TV is on and just stare at the wall and notice how fast the light goes from bright to dark, bright to dark, bright, dark, bright to dark, bright. And notice the flashes, and sometimes it's like a camera flash, bang, bang, pow, pow.
The flicker effect. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
It's because they're putting you into an alpha brainwave state of hypnosis.
Ever notice when you watch a long movie and then you start to get up, you're like, oh, like daisy and dozy, and you got to like almost wake up?
Oh my God, yeah. Oh yeah.
Yep.
That's it right there.
But back to the targeted marketing. You know, we've heard stories that our devices are listening to us, right? Because they all have microphones. My computer does, the TV does, my cell phone does, my tablet has a microphone, right? Everything's got a fucking microphone. Everything's hooked to the internet. They are listening to you, right?
Samsung televisions tell you to watch what you're saying in front of it because you don't know who will be listening.
Well, I have been receiving targeted marketing for LASIK eye surgery.
Right.
And it's not because I've been online looking for, I've never thrown that search term in a Google search. I've never looked for it. Now, I had LASIK eye surgery about 10 years ago, and it's time for me to have more because I've gotten older and my eyes have changed again, and they're getting bad again, and it's time for an update. I need another one. I need another round. I've been speaking. Now, I've been having conversations with Nancy and friends in my living room about LASIK eye surgery. I'm speaking only. I'm not typing anything into my cell phone or on my computer. And they are listening to me, and they went, oh, and I'm getting fucking targeted marketing for LASIK eye surgery. And I've never searched for LASIK eye surgery on any computer or cell phone.
The only other thing I could think of is that how long ago was it when you purchased something or paid money? What did you say? You said you had laser eye surgery done a long time ago?
Yeah, maybe about 10 years ago.
The only other thing I could think of is that they sold a list of patients to a company so that the company could advertise to former patients or current patients. Right?
They can data mine that information from your health care through your driver's license.
Well, because he went to that place so they could actually sell your name.
That's a hell of a coincidence, Ian.
To a company
I've
that
been talking about it.
Right? You see?
Well, fair enough. Maybe they realize that, okay, on average, our patients need an update between 10 and 15 years. But you know what? That's a range of time. That's a hell of a coincidence for them to start target marketing me. Really, literally within weeks or months, right around the time, and not before, but after I've been verbally talking about it with people and openly.
Yeah.
No, I
the
was saying
predator and
that's
who's the
the
prey.
only other explanation I could think of.
I'd say it's a much smaller probability that it just happened that, golly gee, he had it that long ago. Let's start marketing. I think there's a much higher probability that this is just creepy.
Yeah, no
because,
kidding.
Okay,
I'm with
what the implications are disturbing. But I have to feel that that's the higher probability, that they can listen in to everything we're saying.
That's pretty scary to think about.
It is.
Alex Jones did say your dishwasher is listening to you, so he wasn't.
Just said they're putting
and now we've got
Alex
refrigerators.
Jones is telling the truth because back in the 1980s when George Bush Sr. became president, he signed a law where they could put in RF listening devices in every electric device in your home.
That's
and
right,
all they had to do was send a frequency to activate it, and they could listen to you within 11 miles. That's old news.
Yeah, exactly. It's nothing we didn't know already.
He also said they're putting chemicals in the water to make the friggin' frogs gay. He did say that.
I did?
No, Alex Jones said that.
Oh.
Oh, well, Alex Jones, he's got some truth in there, but a whole lot of BS, too.
Yeah.
Well, he was talking about BPA, wasn't he?
Look, Alex Jones has more truth than anything else. But the problem is that the part that's not the truth is mostly where he acts like a fucking crazy person.
Yeah.
And that and if you ask me, the reason is because they already know that without Alex Jones, we're still going to be talking about this stuff. They have to lead the opposition with someone as charismatic, because the guy's got like 10 million fucking subs. I mean, people are listening.
Yep.
Well, it's Bill Hicks, remember?
Now, the point is that he's such a fucking far fringe crazy person that he makes us all look bad.
Yeah.
Well, and that's
Alex Jones is
part
only
of
for the
Listen
money.
to Alex Jones too. You think trees are 10,000 foot tall too, huh? Earth is flat. That's the reaction you're gonna get because
They use it as an ad hominem.
he's the king of conspiracy. He's the leader of the
They always
truth
use it
movement.
as a straw man argument too. They'll say, "Oh, I bet you listen to Alex Jones. You Jones tired and all this stuff."
No, that's exactly it. Because conspiracy theorists doesn't work anymore.
Well, what I think is funny is, if you look at Alex Jones and the topics he covers, whoever they want to neutralize, that's what he starts talking about. When the liberty movement started really getting some legs, all of a sudden he started having libertarians on his shows. Anything that starts to get any kind of real traction, they'll put it on Alex Jones to dilute people's acceptance of its reality, because he does come across as such a lunatic.
very true.
Well, he's a gatekeeper too. He'll give you 90% truth, and they'll misdirect the rest.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Or
definitely.
just blatantly lie to you. I'd say it's probably 80%.
Didn't you say that something about him being related to the CIA?
Yeah, Stratfor.
Oh yeah.
It's a CIA operation.
Yep.
And
Yeah, I've
the
heard that
lady
he's
that
distracting.
Sorry.
He's basically just distracting everyone from the actual truth.
Well, he's
some of it.
He's gatekeeping the real truth. Yeah. Because they know, the elites know it's happening. Okay, they've already mentioned it in speeches. They've admitted it. Okay, there's an awakening. A global awakening is happening. So what do you do? The only way to lead an opposition is to control that opposition.
That's right.
I can't
Remember the article I read to you guys earlier about the co-option of the liberty movement? That's exactly what Alex Jones is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what Donald Trump is too. He's the only way to lead the opposition of people who want change and truth, right, is to control those people who want change.
You have to co-opt it.
Aaron?
You have to
give you
co-opt
the
it.
illusion of choice and the
That's
illusion of change.
That's right, exactly. Now he's doing all the things he said he was going to do, isn't he? isn't he? His first 18 days, 19 days, whatever it is.
Yes.
He's done all the things he said he's going to do, but I can guarantee you he's going to poison the well. He's going to shit in his punch bowl very, very soon.
Oh,
So,
yeah. By the way,
Okay.
let's call them by something other than the elite, because I don't think of them as elite. They are the useless eliters.
Useless leaders. Yeah.
Useless eliters.
The controllers. That's what I.
The blue bloods.
Or the psychopaths in control. One of the two.
Psychopathic controller.
The psychopaths in control.
Yeah.
And I
But
want
anyway.
to take their control away from them, and I'm sure they're aware of that.
Oh, yeah, they knew we were coming.
Yes, they knew we were coming.
I mean,
Now, through technocracy, they've been able to capture the presidency, haven't they?
that's the scary part.
Because
And if
now
you were paying attention to that John Rappaport that I played earlier, that's the fucking scary part right there.
he's using
Yes.
what? He's using what? Twitter, and it's all over Facebook, which Mark Zuckerberg runs, right?
You know, this kind of
So this goes really into all aspects, not even just the medical standing or the educational aspects. It goes into every aspect.
Speaking of what you're talking about, you look at Trump, he's the first celebrity president. And then you look right before him, we got Obama, who was the first do-nothing, has no reputation president. I mean,
the hope and change everybody wanted, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing.
To be fair, Ronald Reagan was a celebrity, for crying out loud. I mean, we did have one of those.
He had some history, but let's face it, his Hollywood career was pretty weak. I mean, he really wasn't that strong. I mean, if it was John Wayne, I would say, yeah, we had a celebrity president, but this, Reagan was a has-been when he was in his heyday, in terms of Hollywood.
Right.
Yeah, look what Reagan did for us.
He was an excellent president, don't get me wrong.
Let's not forget Hollywood is an absolute hotbed of fucking communism.
And pedophiles.
I mean, I'm looking.
Oh yeah, pedophiles, definitely. It's Hollywood. All the at the top levels, they're virtually all pedophiles. I mean,
what I find interesting about that is, you had all these people that, you look at all these child actors and actresses that come out of Hollywood, and they are some of the most twisted, fucked up human beings I have ever seen.
Yeah, that's a good.
They had to be exposed to something that damaged them that significantly. I mean, it's incredible when you look at how many of them have. I mean, you look at the wreck that they call a life, and I'm like, my goodness, what happened to them?
Yeah,
what happened?
Yep.
It sounds like I'm dogging them, but really, I mean, there's a sense of sorrow when you see.
Yeah.
If you have any interest in looking into that sort of a thing, when you see what's happened to the bulk of them, you can't help but have this pang in your heart that just doesn't feel very good.
Yeah, well, I understand a little
That's
too
because
much
you're
about that.
normal human being who has empathy.
Yeah.
Well, these people are pagan and they're slaves to the devil. So, they've got to do it too. They're in a life of sorrow and misery as well.
Yes.
Especially the actors and the singers and stuff. They're in a life of sorrow because they sell their soul to the devil, and that's it, right? They gotta follow or be killed or smeared then killed. Right?
Yep.
Let's be honest. It's part-time sorrow.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's only part-time sorrow.
Amy's craving a fix, and we're into overtime.
Yeah, we're in overtime. So.
Yep.
I'm probably gonna head off here, guys. Good talking to you.
Yeah, Keith, it was really nice to have you on the show.
All right, thank you,
Joe. Thank you.
Keith, I just wanted to say, I think you're a really bright kid, and keep up the good knowledge, good info there.
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask you, Keith. How old are you?
I'm only 18.
Yeah, man, you're a real sharp boy. You're gonna just keep up that truth, man.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, the way I look at things is 100% skeptic all the time. That's my view.
The world
Very
the world
good.
needs more Keats. The world needs a lot more Keats.
Yes, I agree.
Well, thank you. It's nice talking to you guys.
It was a pleasure hearing you, Keith.
Thanks.
I'll probably be in some shows in the future if you guys want me.
Well, just all you gotta
I
do
think
is
that
show
would
up.
be awesome.
All you gotta do is show up in the chat box to let us know that you're there, and you're welcome back anytime, buddy. I
All right.
appreciate your and thanks for your contribution, dude. You got a good head on your shoulders. Keep doing what you're doing.
You're welcome. I'll see you guys later.
All right.
All right, I'm fixing to queue up our outro. Joe, thank you for your time. Thanks for your appearance and your contribution.
Glad to be here.
It is certainly very, very appreciated.
It was wonderful meeting you.
Yeah, it was great meeting you.
Thank you.
Anybody listening? If you like what we got going on here, we do it every Friday. Please subscribe to everybody's channel. Excuse me. My channel is Rufus Cat. Ian is Gemini MC69. That's MC, don't forget, MC69. And Amy is Amaterasu Solar. And you're going to have to figure that one out. Unless Amy would.
AMATERASUSOLAR.
All right. Well, subscribe to our channels because we alternate hosting, and you never know where the host is going to be. It was supposed to be Ian's turn tonight, but he was late, so I hosted. And next week it's going to be on his channel. So with that, I am trying to talk and chew gum at the same time. Trying to get to our outro video here. And
thanks, Joe, for coming. Thanks again, Amy. Always a pleasure.
Thanks
everybody in the chat. Thanks, guys. Juxtapose, all you guys. Jordan Rains, Omaha Ben, Free Bethlehem. Yep, and all the rest that joined us.
Chat.
All our
Chat
wonderful
people.
buddies. Yep. I'm sorry that the conversation went to moles on people's backs, but hey.
Wait, what?
Conversations can sway one way or another.
Did I
was reading that in the chat. I'm going, oh yeah, these guys are really paying attention. Talking about everything else under the sun. Well, it's fun though. Everybody has a great time, and I'm so glad everybody comes here every week to spend time with us.
All right, you
Absolutely.
guys. Much love, everybody.
Love you all.
Love always.
See you on my channel next week. Join us.
Thank you.